Number 10. The Punisher. In the early 2000s, Punisher faced off with Wolverine in Punisher number 16 and 17. Essentially, the Punisher found himself in the crosshairs of Logan, and he needed to buy himself some time without Wolverine getting in his way. To do this, Punisher blows off Wolverine's face with a bit of buckshot in Punisher number 16. Now, thanks to his healing factor, Logan is still standing with his face already starting to heal over his exposed adamantium skull. So obviously, that didn't buy the Punisher much time at all. Instead, in Punisher number 17, Frank Castle makes things just a little bit more below the belt. Literally, as he wiped Wolverine's gonads off of the playing field in a similar way to how he took off Wolverine's face. But of course, even this won't stop the mutant, so Frank Castle resorts to even more drastic measures. Needing the means to give himself a day or two at least before Logan will start coming after him again, the Punisher uses a steamroller to slowly but completely flatten Logan, and then he parks it there and walks off to do his business. If anything, I think this is kind of a testament to how powerful Wolverine actually is, but still, it happened. It was cool. Number 9. Spider-Man. It should be obvious, but you don't dare insult Mary Jane to Peter's face. In Amazing Spider-Man issue number 522, Peter is awoken with a call about a newspaper article claiming that Mary Jane had a little, entanglement, we shall say, with Tony Stark. Now obviously this is not true, and actually it was a setup by a villain, but that's not the point right now. Peter gets out of his bed in Stark Tower and goes looking for his wife. Along the way, he runs into Wolverine in a room with a very lovely high-up view of the city. Now, Logan decides to start going on about how Mary Jane messed up big time, and after a warning from Peter to stop, he decided to comment on her lack of brains. This lovely little comment gets him thrown through unbreakable glass and a really colorful way to catch a cab. Number 8. The Hulk. The first rivalry Wolverine ever had in comic book history is with the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk is basically just a ball of increasingly strong muscle, and he just gets more and more strong the longer the fight goes on, and the more mad he gets. He can dish out basically untold amounts of damage. As for Wolverine, he can take untold amounts of damage, almost always coming back thanks to his incredible healing factor. Their rivalry began with the Incredible Hulk number 181 when Wolverine was first ever introduced, coming in between the Hulk and the Wendigo. Then in the Incredible Hulk number 340, Wolverine takes on the Grey Hulk, going into a berserker rage, ripping into the Hulk like never before. It is awesome to see, that is, until the Hulk heals and makes Wolverine one with the ground. The worst time Hulk defeated Wolverine though would have to be in a different universe, specifically the Ultimate Universe. Here, the Hulk, who was honestly a bit more of a villain to be honest, managed to completely rip Wolverine in half and toss the bottom half far, far away, giving Wolverine the challenge of trying to travel with half a body to reclaim his legs. Number 7. Molly Hayes. I feel like I don't talk about the Runaways enough, and that's a shame because these heroes are a huge hit for Marvel because they rock. Case in point would be Molly Hayes. Molly here is a huge fan of Wolverine's growing up. She was, until she got to meet him. Sometimes Wolverine's angry, savage approach doesn't really work for everyone, and when you come running up yelling and growling at a super strong 10-year-old who just wants to tell you how much of a fan she is of yours, popping your claws and being all weirdly drawn and stuff, yeah, it ain't gonna go well, which Wolverine learned the hard way. After asking Miss Hayes to stop screaming on account of his super sensitive hearing, Wolverine ends up being sock-and-bopped 20 yards out of a church and face first into a snowbank. It's very embarrassing. Number 6. Wasp. This isn't just Wasp humbling Wolverine. This is Wasp humbling the entire X-Men team. During the original Secret Wars in 1985, the Wasp has been shacking up with Magneto. Now, before you get the wrong idea, this is all a ruse so she can figure out what the Master of Magnetism is up to. When he finally reveals it to the X-Men in issue number 7, Wasp immediately turns on Magneto and attacks. Now, with the X-Men wishing to stop her from doing harm to Magneto because they need him, they jump in to defend him. Wasp immediately jumps in to attack them back, and she leads this fight with a big old kick straight to Wolverine's hairy little face. She then bounces off him and lands solid hits on every single one of the X-Men before zipping out of there like a wet fart. Number 5. Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is a hero who for a long time was very underutilized and very underappreciated, and that all changed with Brian Michael Bendis and with the New Avengers. In the 2005 New Avengers, this group of heroes find themselves themselves in the Savage Land on the trail of the psychic vampire Sauron, and they just happened to fall upon Wolverine. Well, what actually happened is that Luke Cage and Jessica were in the jungle, and Wolverine kind of snuck up on Spider-Woman because, quote, he was being tracked and he didn't recognize their scents. Which, it's a silly reason, but it was also a silly thing to even do because Jessica immediately grabs Wolverine by the wrist, flips him on his back, and then turns his own claws on him, plunging them straight through his own neck. It's hella impressive, even if this was actually a Skrull version of her at the time. Number 4, Squirrel Girl. Nobody beats Squirrel Girl. Dr. Doom, Thanos, Fin Fang Foom, Ego the Living Planet, even Galactus, they have all fallen to her might. So, what good is Wolverine gonna do? None whatsoever. Now, this was during a little sparring sesh that took place in New Avengers 2010, issue number 15, after Wolverine somehow beat Iron Fist in hand-to-hand combat. Iron Fist said he was fighting at a 3 at this time, but it's still pitiful. Wolverine calls up his next sparring partner, Squirrel Girl. After absolutely overwhelming Logan with a flurry of kicks and punches, knocking him on his keister, Doreen felt fully confident to turn around and gloat a little. This gave Wolverine the opportunity to get her in an arm hold, telling her to never turn her back in a fight. To which she replies, I know, and that's because Wolverine is literally surrounded by an army of maybe like 70 squirrels, all poised to attack him, which forces his surrender to the all-powerful Squirrel Girl. Number 3, Beast. Again, Beast is strong, he's fast, and he's acrobatic, but Logan has those traits as well, plus quite a few others, which is why in a normal straight-up hand-to-hand fight, you'd have to give this one to Logan. Unless Beast has got some plans in place or can otherwise use his great mind, he isn't likely to come out on top against Wolverine. Unless he's got some help. In the Here Comes Tomorrow storyline, Beast is taken over by an entity known as Sublime, who further enhanced Beast and himself by channeling the power of the Phoenix Force. All that power turned this evil version of Beast into a threat to everybody. Now Logan stepped up to take Beast on, but Sublime's powers completely negated Wolverine's healing factor and left him vulnerable. Sublime Beast seized the advantage and tore through Logan, leaving him without being able to regenerate. But of course, this was all cancelled out later by Jean Grey with some good old time travel. It was definitely a very violent and sticky end for Logan though, just saying. Number 2, Cyclops. The rivalry between Wolverine and Cyclops is well documented. There have been entire story arcs to do with their inability to get along. Ever since Wolverine came along, Cyclops just hasn't been as cool as he used to be, and that's gotta sting. While the argument of who can beat who comes up a lot, I think we all just have to look at the facts and understand that when it comes to pure power, Cyclops has the win 9 times out of 10. The guy's optic blasts have been shown to destroy entire mountains, let alone 5'3" angry Canadians. While there have been plenty of times where Cyclops has blasted the skin off Wolverine and put him down, I think the most embarrassing of these defeats comes in 1963's Uncanny X-Men issue 115. Here, the X-Men have made their way to the Savage Land, and thanks to Sauron, Wolverine gets put under some mind control. Now, Cyclops, seeing the danger this Wolverine poses, of course, has to end the threat, and he does so very quickly, blasting Wolverine right in the face, flipping him over mid-jump and landing him face first in a pool of water. Now when Wolverine recovers for the second attack, Cyclops is not pulling any punches and simply fires a blast that sends Wolverine flying a good couple of 100 meters away. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Magneto. Now, classic comic book fans all know that Magneto is not a hero. Over the years, he has begun to twist to become a hero though, and through that tiny little technicality, I'm going to talk about the time that Magneto completely annihilated Wolverine and reduced his entire character to a whole different level than almost anyone else ever did before. In the 1993 crossover event Fatal Attractions, Magneto was offering mutants sanctuary on his ship, the Avalon, and recovering from the legacy virus, he was planning to completely wipe out humanity, being opposed by the X-Men. Now Xavier, in a special Shi'ar suit, leads the fight against Magneto on Avalon. Magneto holds off everyone until Wolverine gets the drop on him. Now Wolverine makes it so close, slicing him across the chest just a little too close for comfort. This pushes Magneto over the edge. He turns the adamantium on Wolverine's skeleton into liquid and quite literally pulls it out of his body. This got Magneto brought down quick. It led to the rise of Onslaught, revealed that Wolverine's claws are actually bone underneath, and turned Wolverine into a completely feral version of himself.
At number 10 is Alfred Pennyworth, who's only at number 10 because he's not technically a superhero, but that doesn't make this old man with a peg leg giving Batman an absolute beatdown any less entertaining. A decorated war vet, Alfred reaches a breaking point with Bruce Wayne's despondent demeanor. Then the unthinkable happens as Alfred, with unwavering resolve, delivers a resounding slap to Batman's face. Now Bruce, challenged, resorts with a defiant don't. But Alfred remains undeterred, and in a confrontation that defies expectations, Alfred, despite his age and prosthetic leg, stands his ground. He points out Bruce's lack of experience in war, delivering impactful blows that leave Batman spewing all kinds of red bodily fluids. However, a desperate Batman resorts to a cheap shot, targeting Alfred's fake leg to gain an advantage, and putting Alfred on the floor. It's a surprising turn of events that prevents Batman from facing utter humiliation. The clash between the Dark Knight and his trusted butler reveals unexpected facets of their dynamic. At number 9 is Aquaman. Nobody leaves Batman gasping for air quite like Aquaman does. Their clash in the Legends of the DC Universe number 27 showed the relentless determination of Arthur Curry. See, despite Batman claiming victory, Aquaman's relentless slugfests of fists echoed through the pages and left an indelible mark on Batman's ego, leaving us all questioning the Dark Knight's dominance within the League. In recent encounters, Aquaman opts for a strategic shift, abandoning the conventional blows for a menacing Darth Vader-style throat grip. Batman, with teeth bared and gritted, caught in Curry's grasp, is completely vulnerable to a fatal trident thrust. A twist of fate, however, as Wonder Woman intervenes, preventing Gotham's Guardian from becoming an aquatic feast for the Justice League. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would seriously appreciate it. It helps the channel get more views to more people, and thanks for helping us out. At number 8 is the Punisher. Enter Frank Castle, a no-nonsense vigilante who's armed to the teeth. In the 1994 crossover issue, Castle tests Batman's trademark patience. Channeling Ra's al Ghul's philosophy from Batman Begins, Castle asserts that criminals thrive on society's understanding. He brings this belief crashing into Batman's world, landing punches that resonate with unparalleled force. See, the Punisher's primal fear-inducing aura prompts Batman to step in just before he dispenses justice to the Joker with a bullet. Yeah, you heard me right. Batman, the protector of Gotham, is compelled to save the Joker from the Punisher's lethal resolve, forcing him to quite literally bite the bullet. Enter a moment of raw intensity where the Punisher nearly executes the Joker as Batman, driven by an unfamiliar fear, intervenes just in time. Batman, shielding the Crown Prince of Crime from a hailstorm of bullets, urging the clown to, quote, run. Run for your life. Seems that even the world's greatest detective can be unnerved, and in this clash of ideologies, even the Bat bows to the uncompromising Punisher.
Number 7, Beast. For the longest time, I actually thought that Beast was one of the better heroes out there, and that's because I didn't know Beast, apparently. Beast is a dick. Dr. Hank McCoy is one of the 8 smartest people in the world, and being smart in comic books seems to be a pretty easy path to being morally dubious. Don't get me wrong, Wolverine isn't a Boy Scout by any stretch of the imagination, but he still holds his morals. Wolverine and Beast were actually friends. Beast stuck with Wolverine during the Schism event, and he was also on the side of the Avengers with Wolverine during the Avengers vs. X-Men. But despite that, in order to deal with external threats to the new mutant nation of Krakoa, Beast has taken a position as the chief of the intelligence agency, X-Force, which has almost completely cost him his morality. McCoy has chosen some questionably authoritarian actions to guarantee the Krakoan sovereignty, like sabotaging the country of Terra Verde, squirreling away funds to open a space station prison, and interrupting one of Wolverine's resurrections to attach an obedience collar to him and send him on clandestine operations, all of which was kept secret from the rest of X-Force. This ticked off Wolverine, which in turn ticked off Beast even more. He sent Wolverine on a mission so that he would be captured for an auction that Hank attended, and then he literally showed Wolverine to the afterlife in order to resurrect Logan again in a primitive state and turn him into Weapon X. Where Beast sent him on more missions, Beast has become a literal villain, and he just keeps getting worse and worse as time goes on. Number 6. Gambit. As is usually the case between two popular characters, the Raging Cajun, Gambit, and Wolverine have each actually scored a couple wins over each other, but one of the most humiliating defeats fell squarely on Wolverine's hairy shoulders. In Uncanny X-Men number 273, the two heroes decided to face off in the Danger Room, the X-Men's training facility, so obviously they weren't out to end the other's life or anything, but the only thing on the line here was pride, and Wolverine absolutely lost some this day. Though they initially looked evenly matched, Gambit gained the upper hand by making the Danger Room conjure up Lady Deathstrike. Logan was so distracted that he didn't realize it was a trick until too late. Gambit got Wolverine with a few staff strikes before knocking Wolverine on his back and pressing his staff to his throat. This even prompted a concerned Jubilee to randomly burst into tears over Wolverine's welfare. Looking at the panel now, it's actually kind of hilarious. Number 5. Captain America. It is no secret that Captain America is the most decorated soldier in the Marvel Universe. This is owing to his enhanced abilities, but it's mostly due to his experience, guts, and heart. He and Wolverine have had their fair share of battles, with the first one as early as 1941, and Cap's usually come out on top. A large reason for Cap's ability to defeat Logan probably has to do with his discipline, as Logan tends to go berserk way too often in a fight, which leaves him prone to making a mistake his opponent can capitalize on, and that's all that Captain America is about. It is also worth noting that Captain America was the original Weapons Plus. He is basically the granddaddy to the source of half of Wolverine's power and training. We gotta imagine that Cap has got a huge advantage over old Wolvie here. He even beat the snot out of Wolverine when Cap was turned into a werewolf, picking up Wolverine and chucking him into a group of other werewolves like he was a bowling ball. Number 4. Daredevil. During the Enemy of the State storyline, Wolverine challenged a lot of superheroes. During this fight, Logan was being forced to go after Daredevil in his own home. Now, Logan was really being guided to take on Daredevil in the hopes of drawing out Elektra, but the fight wasn't as easy as Logan's controllers were likely hoping it would be. Even with the surprise attack in his own home, Daredevil was quickly ready for the fight. The odds were further stacked against Daredevil because Logan had brought along over a dozen of his new friends who happened to be ninjas armed with bows and swords. Daredevil handled it just like a video game and took out the nameless goons before moving on to the big old boss. But even then, he was just looking to get through to Logan rather than just taking him down. Daredevil did have home field advantage though, obviously knowing his own home. So when he got knocked down, he knew his weight set was nearby and he just smacked Logan in the face with a dumbbell. The blow was enough to break through the mind control long enough that the fight came to an end for the time being. Number 3. The Thing. The Thing is one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe, able to stand toe-to-toe with the Hulk in battle. He and Wolverine have had their scrapes, and most of the time, Logan's been on the losing side. In one little altercation taking place in Fantastic Four 1961, issue number 374, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Professor Hulk, and Spider-Man, who had previously taken the place of the Fantastic Four temporarily, were hunting for Johnny Storm, who had accidentally destroyed part of Empire State University. This led to an altercation between the four heroes and the actual Fantastic Four. When Wolverine went to attack Susan, Ben Grimm grabbed the Canadian and slammed him into the ground, calling him an arrogant little creep. But Wolverine in his rage used all his might and slashed Ben across the face, famously disfiguring the character. But the Thing got his payback as he yells, "You freaking little psycho," and then he whacks Wolverine with one punch, sending him flying through not only the wall, but through the adjacent building and straight into the next one over. Number 2. Deadpool. Deadpool and Wolverine first met in 1994's Wolverine number 88. While Wolverine may be stronger, Deadpool's speed, healing factor, his skill in combat, and his absolutely buck-wild behavior has allowed him to get the drop on Wolverine multiple times and do a lot of damage many different times. In their first ever encounter, the Merc with the Mouth ambushes Wolverine while he's checking up on Garrison Kane, another Weapon X experiment. Now during the ensuing fight, Deadpool earned his reputation as one of Marvel Comics' most brutal mutants by stabbing his two swords into Wolverine's heart and lungs. Now while this typically would not phase the healing mutant, Wolverine had actually recently lost his healing factor during a bout with Magneto. Thankfully for Wolverine, his healing factor had begun to slowly return in the days leading up to this fight with Deadpool, allowing him to survive the wounds he'd suffered and win a rematch, but he did need help to do that. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Spock. There have been a few characters that have stopped Wolverine in one move, but this one really comes out of left field. In a crossover between the X-Men and Star Trek, Logan faced Mr. Spock. Faced is kind of giving Wolverine too much credit though. Upon boarding the Starship Enterprise, Wolverine moved to attack Spock, only to discover that Spock, one, not only knew who Wolverine was, but Wolverine also discovered the effects of the Vulcan nerve pinch. In literally one quick move, Spock used the nerve pinch to knock Wolverine to the ground almost instantly. It's another case of skill winning against brute strength, and that's why Wolverine needs to learn a little finesse.
At number 10 is Black Panther. So here's the deal, there have been quite a few instances where Captain America has faced off against Black Panther, and let's just say it didn't always end in Cap's favor. The initial clash between Captain America and the then Black Panther, Azuri, in Wakanda was an eye-opener. Cap was on a mission against Yahtzee spies, only to find out that they were already taken care of by Wakandan forces. This resulted in a confrontation where Cap, without his vibranium shield, faced Azuri and lost. Their subsequent encounters, especially with T'Challa, are equally intriguing. Tales of Suspense number 97 marked their first clash, where it seemed more like a test of Cap's fighting spirit rather than a serious showdown. Later in Black Panther number 24, it was yet another test with T'Challa hinting at his capability to overpower Cap in a real fight. Not to forget the Contest of Champions 2, where external manipulation played a part and T'Challa sensed Cap's lack of will to fight. The key aspect here is the intent. They've never faced off with the intent to eliminate one another. Black Panther usually has the upper hand, yet Captain America always puts up a fight. Their dynamic showcases of mutual respect despite their clashes. At number 9 is Wolverine. Cap and Wolverine, two iconic superheroes, have had their share of clashes over the years. They've been through more battles and challenges than most, and their determination is unmatched, but you see, even the mightiest can have their off days. Take that one time when Logan got his brain scrambled and went all rogue. When Steve Rogers tried to intervene, he quickly realized he was in for a world of hurt. Logan, out of his right mind, didn't hold back whatsoever. He absolutely pummeled Cap, leaving him unconscious. It must have really stung for Steve, waking up to that after being taken down so swiftly. Just goes to show that even the best can have bad days in the superhero world. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Iron Man. Iron Man is a tech-savvy and resourceful Tony Stark who used his strategic genius to set up a trap for Cap and his allies. See, Stark employed a fake distress signal, luring the anti-registration forces into a carefully laid plan. But Cap had his own plans too. As Cap and Iron Man came face to face, a handshake between the two became an unexpected move by Cap, who slyly placed an EMP device in Iron Man's hand, causing Tony's armor to shut down. What followed was chaos as Cap's allies attacked to escape the ambush. Stark, after his armor rebooted after a couple minutes, displayed his frustration by fiercely engaging in combat with his former friend, repeatedly striking Cap. The conflict escalated until Hercules himself intervened, preventing Cap from enduring further blows. The clash between these two iconic superheroes serves as a reminder that even the mightiest can be vulnerable to unexpected tricks and betrayals, emphasizing that in the intricate dance of heroism, no one is immune to moments of vulnerability. At number 7 is Superman. Batman has faced numerous foes, but none seem to humble the Dark Knight quite like Superman does. Now, despite Batman's meticulous planning and strategic brilliance, the Man of Steel consistently thwarts his best laid schemes and emerges victorious time and time again. Now, while it's clear that Batman was about to have the last laugh in the movie, in the comic books, it's typically Superman who delivers the final blow. For example, in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman is decimated body and soul by Superman's overwhelming power, where Superman crushes Batman physically and spiritually. Superman Batman number 2 exposes just what happens when the Dark Knight's meticulous planning and strategy ultimately backfires, nearly costing him his life. Even armed to the teeth with kryptonite in Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, Batman still faces defeat. Superman's sacrifice witnessed Batman's complete manhandling, albeit under Superman's mind control. Now, while circumstances may vary, the pattern still holds. When true to their characters, Superman prevails, leaving Batman's plans in shambles. Clash of these iconic heroes often leans in favor of the last son of Krypton, unfortunately for Batman.
Number 6, Magic and Colossus. Now, yes, neither of these guys are villains. Not normally, but they definitely became villains, and that's what we are going to talk about. In the Avengers vs. X-Men event, a group of 5 X-Men were granted quite the power boost in the form of the Phoenix Force, which came to Earth for Hope Summers. Now, thanks to Tony Stark, it was split into 5 parts, and that's when it inhabited the bodies of those 5 X-Men. The mutant siblings Colossus and Magic were 2 of these X-Men. Now, Spider-Man is physically no match for either one of these guys, not with the Phoenix Force at least. When he ended up facing them both in the 9th issue of the event, Spider-Man got completely beaten to a pulp. It was brutal, but of course, he still has that charming personality and beautiful brain. It turns out that when one of the avatars for the Phoenix Force is defeated, the power of the remaining avatars gets boosted up even more, and it ended up that there were only a few of them left. Even though he was completely wrecked, Spider-Man gives them a little innocent reminder of the fact that if one of them is defeated, the other one will gain even more power. Now, we don't get to see the fight that takes place between the 2 of them. Instead, we get to see the unconscious bodies of both of them, with Spider-Man still barely standing to let everyone know he got them to knock each other out. But they still completely wrecked the web slinger. Number 5, the Thunderbolts. Thanks to the MCU, Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland, most people believe that Spider-Man and Tony Stark are as thick as thieves. And they are. In the MCU. There was a time where comic book Tony Stark and Peter Parker got along. In the beginning of the comic book Civil War event, Peter was all for Tony's Superhuman Registration Act, and this was partially because of the way Peter admired Tony Stark. But Iron Man was totally using this admiration to his advantage. He used Peter's naivety to convince Spider-Man to unmask himself to the world, which caused untold amounts of problems for the hero, not only in that story, but even outside of it. It even sort of indirectly led to the split between Peter and Mary Jane Watson. Now, one of Tony's methods for enforcing the Superhuman Registration Act was deputizing villains to hunt down Captain America's forces as the Thunderbolts. When Spider-Man made his getaway from Iron Man's forces, the Thunderbolts were on him like hotcakes, and if it wasn't for the intervention of the Punisher, Peter could have 100% lost his life, and he almost did. Number 4, Carnage. The red symbiotes always seem to be the worst of the worst, and the one that would be born from Venom himself seems to be the worst of the worst of the worst. When Eddie Brock was briefly detached from the Venom symbiote, he was imprisoned, and his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, a psychotic serving 11 consecutive life sentences in Rikers Island. Now, when Venom showed up and bust Eddie out of prison, it produced its first offspring as a result of Thanos seeking the Infinity Gems out in space, which is the weirdest reason, but that's what happened. Now, Spider-Man learned the hard way that Carnage was absolutely no joke. The Carnage symbiote was not vulnerable to the same things that Venom was, and his strength and speed were greater than both Spider-Man and Venom. Not to mention, he was absolutely ruthless, even more aggressive than Venom, and with all the lethal of Venom and not a smidge of the Protector. The Wall Crawler had to call for help to fight Carnage, and from none other than one of his own villains. Number 3, Venom. That villain that he ended up calling in for help against Carnage was none other than Venom himself. Now, Venom has had an interesting time in comic books, going from villain to anti-hero, back to villain, and now to just straight up a hero. But when he first showed up, he was absolutely just a villain. Eddie Brock and the symbiote shared a personal vendetta against Spider-Man, and they united in their hate for him, literally bonding over it. Venom posed a huge threat to Spider-Man, becoming a villain that gave Peter a run for his money more than once and in more than one medium. The symbiote's unique ability to bypass Spider-Man's spider sense stripped the hero of his primary defense that has helped him on so many other occasions. And on top of that, Venom was even stronger and more durable than Spider-Man, with sharp, pointy teeth and a hell of a lot of extra symbiote abilities that the webhead was just not prepared to deal with. Their initial encounters were intense, with Spider-Man often on the receiving end of brutal beatings. This forced Spider-Man to adapt his fighting style drastically, as the symbiote-covered villain was relentless in his pursuit of the hero's demise. Number 2, Green Goblin. He threw Gwen Stacy off the George Washington Bridge, orchestrated the Clone Saga, and wiped out Ben Reilly right in front of Peter Parker. Norman Osborn is absolutely Spider-Man's #1 adversary, simply for the fact that he has caused Peter more emotional pain than any of his other villains, even Doc Ock. Now obviously everything that I mentioned was Norman, but Harry Osborn was also the Green Goblin, adding physical and emotional turmoil to the whole thing. Now I don't think I need to pick one event in particular, but I would say that Gwen Stacy was the worst of the bunch. Green Goblin proved to Spider-Man that he is not able to save everyone. Even though Peter was so close, he still failed, and when you think about it, Green Goblin made it so that Peter was the one to shoot the web that broke Gwen's back. He may not have known that's how it would go down, but he lucked out with that move, not only terrorizing Peter, but completely psychologically tormenting the poor guy. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's the Spot. Jonathan Owen is a villain that only well-versed fans of Spider-Man would recognize, or it used to be that way before Across the Spider-Verse came out. Now as the Spot, Jonathan hasn't always been the most relevant villain of Peter Parker. He often ends up on lists of Spider-Man's worst and unknown villains. I mean, when he first confronted Spider-Man and announced his villain moniker in Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 99 in 1985, the hero hit the ground laughing. Literally, he fell on the ground and was laughing. It was bad. But it made it all the more embarrassing for Spider-Man when the Spot actually defeated him. Spot threw Peter in and out of his dimensions using his hole portals, and he landed more than a few good punches on the hero. The Spot doesn't hit hard, but as he says, even the strongest of trees can be felled by sufficient strokes from even the smallest of hatchets. Yes, he said that. I know it's weird. Eventually, he left Peter discombobulated, with Black Cat having to help him back to his feet. He got his own back eventually, but still, the Spot took him down. Coming in at number 10, it's Batman. I bet you didn't expect to see this one on the list, and honestly, who would? I know who. Anyone who knows that Batman is Batman. In 1981's DC Special Series number 27, Batman comes upon the rampaging Green Rage monster. The Joker had tricked Hulk into believing that Batman was the enemy, and the Hulk ended up getting the Dark Knight in a bear hug where he almost broke the Bat's back, but Batman busts out of it and uses a knockout gas. Now Hulk ain't really that dumb, and he just kind of holds his breath until Batman kicks him straight in the gut, winding the Hulk and causing him to breathe in the gas. Yeah, it's probably unrealistic as hell, but it's a man that fights criminals in a bat suit fighting a guy that turns into a giant green monster because of gamma rays from a bomb. Tell me how that's realistic. Number 9, Thor. When Kal Borson, the Serpent, sent down 7 magical hammers that represented his 7 magical followers to Earth, the hammer Null found its way to our lovely green friend, transforming him into Null, Breaker of Worlds. Now Hulk/Null went a-smashin', rampaging all over South America, bringing him into conflict with the Avengers, who he defeated, and eventually with a solo Thor. When fighting Thor, Null teamed up with angrier Breaker of Souls, which was actually Ben Grimm the Thing. So not only is Thor taking on the Hulk, who is more than a handful, but he took on the Thing, one of Hulk's biggest rivals, at the same time, and both of these guys were powered up by the magical hammers that they wielded. Thor then proceeds to literally and temporarily take the Thing's life by throwing Mjolnir straight through him, leaving a massive hole in the Thing's chest. Thor and the Hulk then face off in an epic battle that ends with Thor managing to knock the Hulk into space, leaving Thor seriously injured, but winning the fight. Number 8, Wolverine. Wolverine actually made his debut in 1974's The Incredible Hulk number 181. He interfered in a fight between the Hulk and the Wendigo, which saw Wolvie and Hulk team up to beat the monster, but also saw a little kerfuffle between Big Green and the Angry Canadian. Now 8 years later, What If number 31 imagined what would have happened if Wolverine managed to take down the Hulk, which he did by clawing through his throat. Pretty nasty. But their nastiest bout was definitely in Old Man Logan. Following a huge conflict where the villains managed to band together and wipe out almost all the heroes, a pretty sinister Bruce Banner took over a section of California with his inbred kids, the Hulk Gang. In the last few issues of that story, in revenge for the Hulk wiping out his family, Wolverine went on the warpath and eradicated most of the gang. Banner then hulked out into this 30-foot tall, nasty Hulk and ate Wolverine alive, only for Wolverine to reform inside of his stomach and cut his way out. The Hulk would survive as a head on a metal body after this, only for the sole surviving Hulk gang member to decapitate him to save Wolverine's life later on. The living head would then be buried deep underground to keep it from ever coming back again. Number 7, Russian Batman. In this dystopian Earth number 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Now eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take him down. So, he stole Wonder Woman, bound her up with her own lasso, and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever, but alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her lasso and remove the generator powering the lamps. Unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he implanted within his own small intestine, but before he passed, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout kind of way. Number 6, Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the most beloved Spider-Man runs ever, which made the death of Spider-Man such a hard comic to read. Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, escapes the Triskelion along with Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Kraven the Hunter, Electro, and Vulture, and hides in an apartment building near Central Park. With S.H.I.E.L.D. occupied by an explosion, Osborn tells the 6 sinister villains that it's the perfect time to do God's work and finally take out Spider-Man. Now Otto objects to this plan, but Norman overpowers Otto and deals a fatal blow to him. Learning this, Peter heads to where the battle took place to find Otto's body. He goes off to investigate where Norman was off said to be, but when he leaves, he ends up spotting Captain America standing over a beaten Nick Fury and sees the Punisher aiming a rifle at Cap. That's all part of a separate issue, but he immediately dives towards Cap and pushes him out of the way, taking the bullet on himself. Now while it wasn't fatal, in his weakened state he had a much harder time facing off against Green Goblin and his collected villains. Peter puts up one hell of a heroic fight with the help of Aunt May, the Human Torch, and Mary Jane, taking out pretty much everyone until he faces this super amped up version of Green Goblin. Fighting on his last legs, he's helped out by Mary Jane, who shares one last kiss with Peter before he defeats the Goblin and then suffers his final blow from an explosion. He then passes away in the arms of Mary Jane in a pretty iconic panel, and now I want to cry. So that's great. Number 5, Countdown to Infinite Crisis. I think we can all agree that it's incredibly rare to see a mainline superhero taken out of the picture. And if it does happen, it's usually in a huge blaze of glory like Spider-Man up there, or an incredibly tragic moment, or after a long momentous battle with cancer in the case of Marvel's Mar-Vell. So when Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, was erased from existence thanks to a bullet from a barrel at the hands of Maxwell Lord in the Countdown to Infinite Crisis, it was pretty bad. After following Ted the whole book as he struggles for anyone in the Justice League to take him seriously, while he's correctly on the trail of Maxwell Lord and learning of all his misuse of both the Justice League's files, Batman's Brother's Eye satellite, and the OMAX, you'd expect Kord to come out surviving, having a cathartic moment where he finally gets the League's respect or to make a dent in Lord's plans, but instead, he gets snuffed out like a tea light candle that hadn't even begun to make the wax melt. It's abrupt, it's brutal, and it made me legitimately sad to read it. Number 4, House of M. Look, there is getting completely clobbered, losing life or loved ones, going down the path of a tyrant, and turning on one another, and that all happens in House of M. The kicking off point for this story was a defeat all of its own, the heroes being completely helpless as the Scarlet Witch completely rewrote reality. Now while she gave everyone pretty much exactly what they all wanted and made mutants the dominant race on the Earth, she robbed the world of their free will and had them all living a complete lie. And when that lie was uncovered, the Scarlet Witch lost more than she already had. Blaming that loss on her inclusion as a mutant, she spoke the 3 little words of no more mutants, and all at once, the mutant species suffered one of its most devastating defeats. All at once, 986,618 mutants were depowered, leaving some in situations that saw them lose their lives, thanks to the decimation. It was first estimated that 91.4% of the world's mutant population lost their powers overnight, leaving less than 200 mutants in the world. The Xavier Institute's mutant students count went down from 182 to just 27. This left mutants on the brink of complete extinction. Number 3, Hush. Batman has a bit of a habit for being infallible. Or at least I think that's what he likes to tell himself. So, when someone gets the better of him, it hurts. But when that someone is a childhood best friend, I can imagine it hurts quite a bit more. In the 2003 story Batman Hush, Bruce Wayne's childhood friend, Dr. Tommy Elliot, comes back to Gotham, but unbeknownst to Bruce, Tommy has a plan in place. Working with the Riddler and a large array of Batman's rogues gallery, including Killer Croc, Clayface, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and even the Joker, Tommy orchestrates a huge plan manipulating events and those closest to Bruce Wayne to leave Batman distracted, outsmarted, paranoid, and ultimately subdued. He uses intimate details of Bruce's life against him in an attempt to take down Batman and have him unmasked at Arkham Asylum, all in some weird attempt for revenge against Bruce's father and a promise made by baby Bruce. Now, if it wasn't for the intervention of Jim Gordon and a reformed Two-Face, Batman would have completely lost, being broken down over the course of the story by his old friend. Number 2, Pain of the Gods. If we are talking devastating defeats, a really good place to look would be issues 101 to 106 of JLA from 2004, a storyline titled Pain of the Gods that details each member of the Justice League's biggest failures. It is absolutely depressing, but on the bright side, perfect for this list. It kicks off with Superman, who arrives to save people trapped in a burning building. Now, an unnamed hero shows up to lend a hand while Superman saves those inside, and he brings them to safety until an explosion goes off, burning the other superhero to a crisp. The second issue follows Flash as he fails to save 2 younger people from a burning building, finding them when it was too late and the smoke inhalation had got them. He then goes around the city installing fire detectors in every single house, getting mad at a family who didn't find time to go install a new battery. In issue 3, we see John Stewart, Green Lantern, trapped between 2 separate domestics. He rushes to one and prevents it, but when he makes it to the other, it was arguably worse and resulted in a loss of life. The next issue follows Martian Manhunter, but this time it's more of his failings to understand the emotion that we experience as humans and his alienation from that and the pain of losing his entire species. It's really interesting, honestly, but moving on to issue 105, this one follows Wonder Woman, and for the Amazon, it was an extremely close near-death experience at the hands of a new supervillain that drove her down a path of needing some emotional support. Now, each issue ends with the team coming together for each other as a support system, and it's actually really sweet. And it all wraps up in the final issue with a story that was happening alongside everything else I talked about, but I'll leave that for you to read for yourself because it's really cool and I think you'll like it. And finally, in at number 1, it's Nightfall. There are many deranged and off-the-wall villains in Batman's rogues gallery, and while the Dark Knight has suffered losses and defeats at the hands of a few, none of those defeats are as infamous as the one he suffered at the hands of Bane. By issue 11 of the Broken Bat part of the arc, Bane had managed to find out that Bruce Wayne was indeed Batman. Bane surprised Bruce at his home, pumped himself with venom, and laid a brutal beatdown on the Dark Knight in his own home. The fight continued on into the Batcave, and being completely taken by surprise, Batman is on his last legs when the venom-fueled tank of a man lifted Batman over his head and dropped him spine first onto his massive back-breaking knee. This brutal move, captured in one of the most iconic panels ever, put the Batman completely out of commission, requiring him to choose another to fill his role as the protector of Gotham until he could make his final triumphant return. Coming in at number 10 today is Batman and Oliver Queen. In the exceedingly famous Dark Knight Returns story, we see what is arguably one of the best Superman vs. Batman fights to ever grace comic books. In the last issue, number 4, it pits an aged Bruce Wayne against a Superman that has become a puppet of the government. During the fight, Superman has been weakened by a nuclear explosion, Hunter missiles, a tank, a sonic device that makes his nose bleed, and Batman even uses every watt of the city's power to electrocute Superman's brain. Batman then socks Superman straight across the face a few times and shoots acid into his face, but then Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, shoots an arrow made of kryptonite at the Man of Steel while upside down with his one remaining arm and his teeth while dangling from a fire escape. It sounds nuts. While Superman catches the arrow, it still weakens him, which is when he takes a studded bat boot to the jaw. Batman then seemingly passes to the pearly gates from a heart attack. Even at 55 though, Bruce Wayne left Superman battered and bleeding, and the whole thing was just a ruse. Well played. Number 9, Wonder Woman Dead Earth. This comic picks up an apocalyptic wasteland in what used to be Gotham City. Now, deep down in the remnants of the Batcave, Wonder Woman had been kept alive in a containment unit and was awoken by a group of humans who were running from a mutated monster known as a Hydra. After saving the Humies and liberating their city, she journeys to Themyscira only to find out that the Hydra are actually her fellow Amazons mutated by atomic radiation after the Amazons had decided to go to war with the rest of humanity who had driven the Earth to its breaking point. The world had basically bombarded Themyscira with nuclear fire, even though Diana used the absolute limits of her powers to try and stop it. Now, when Superman, who fought for humanity, turned up to try and explain why he couldn't have helped her, we see just how powerful this Wonder Woman is. Losing complete control of herself, Wonder Woman and Superman fought each other to the point of causing a great fire that plunged the world into the apocalypse. And at the end of that fight, Wonder Woman, who was double fisting some kryptonite, brought Superman to his final rest with a hole straight through the chest. Number 8. Injustice Wonder Woman. The Injustice comics are packed with intense battles, but the confrontation between Wonder Woman and Superman in the 8th issue of Injustice Gods Among Us, Year 4, orchestrated by Batman, is particularly memorable. Due to a deal struck up with the gods that is then refused and countered by Wonder Woman, who is working alongside Superman, she instead demands a trial by combat, and after Superman volunteers to represent his side of things, Wonder Woman is chosen by Batman as the combatant to face Superman. Now, being a warrior born in a fight to the death, she is honor bound to go all in. It is a brutal showdown. The two warriors initially appear evenly matched, but then Superman gains the upper hand, somehow. Despite Superman's plea for Diana to surrender, her refusal to yield becomes his downfall. Wonder Woman intensifies her assault, leveraging her superior combat skills and exploiting Clark's moment of hesitation. Wonder Woman gouges Superman's eyes, and in a swift move, she completely shatters his arm with a strong elbow, like that, marking one of the most brutal conclusions to their long-lasting history of clashes. Despite Superman's desperate attempts to retaliate, deploying all the power he has, he is relentlessly overpowered and ultimately knocked out cold.
And number 7 is Thor. Our thumbnail today has literally the coolest backstory. See, in the comics you'll notice a certain god of thunder was missing from the entire Civil War ordeal. That's because at the time Thor was deceased, but not for long of course, because this is comic books we're talking about. Now during this time, Iron Man was kind of the big shot running the show at S.H.I.E.L.D. and taking charge after winning the first Civil War. Captain America seemed out of the picture, and Stark even made a clone of Thor which he used to lie to the whole world saying Thor supported his cause. Then Thor came back and, well, he was not happy. He rebuilt part of Asgard over the White House, and Iron Man rolls in thinking he'd get Thor to join his team and follow the government's orders, but Thor is just not having it, especially with Iron Man acting all bossy and making clones of him and whatnot. So Thor shows him what's what. He thrashes Iron Man's super fancy suit, striking him multiple times with lightning and leaving him defenseless. Gripping Tony by the throat, Thor reminds Tony just who's a god and who's the puny mortal. Iron Man tries to smooth things over by offering diplomatic immunity for Asgard, but with his most powerful suit now completely trashed, Tony ends up hitching a ride back to town in the back of a pickup truck.
Number 6, Daredevil again. This time I was able to find and read the actual comic. Yay! Okay, so back in the 1990s, it was quite common for comics to feature iconic duels and let the readers decide the outcomes through a voting system. 1999's Contest of Champions Volume 2, Number 4 is a perfect example of this when Daredevil faces off against Deadpool. Deadpool does not fight fair. We know this to be true from the last point, and Daredevil should too. The problem for Daredevil is that he's just too much of a good guy hero. Deadpool takes complete advantage of that fact by throwing a very tiny wrapped up fresh little human off of the roof that the two are fighting on. When Daredevil naturally rushes to save the little one, he goes careening off of the building, catching the wrapped up kid, and he lands in a dumpster. This is when he realizes that the kid was actually not a kid at all, but a doll of Deadpool with a tape recorder of, and I quote, authentic fake baby noisemaker guaranteed to fool superheroes every time, end quote. This is when Deadpool pops up behind Matt Murdock with his fully loaded placed squarely on DD's noggin. Luckily we cut away before Wade finishes the job, but he got him pretty good there. Number 5, Hawkeye. Okay, now to be clear, this isn't actually Hawkeye who Wade is humbling here. This is taking place during the period of time when Norman Osborn is in charge of what he called hammer, and he has his Dark Avengers. So this is technically Bullseye dressed up as Hawkeye, just so we're clear. Now I've talked about another moment from 2008's Deadpool before, where he and Bullseye fought in a meat factory, and that was also humbling for Hawkeye / Bullseye. But this is on another level. It's also very short and sweet, so that's nice. So in the very next issue, after Bullseye recovers from their last fight in the meat factory, he sets up a trap for Deadpool, who had set up a trap for him. They made a trap for each other. Instead, Deadpool gets very frustrated and just goes out to find Lester on his own. Now, driving in a massive truck with huge massive wheels, he passes under a highway bridge where Hawkeye / Bullseye was waiting with a rocket launcher. He fires this at Deadpool, who sees it coming in the rearview mirror, and then he slams on the brakes, drifts the car sideways while rolling down the windows, allowing the rocket to just smoothly fly through the cab of the vehicle and out the opposite window, blowing up in the distance. And all Bullseye / Hawkeye can do is admit how awesome it was. Because it was awesome. It was super cool. Number 4, all of the heroes. Literally all of them. In Marvel's Dark Ages, the awakening of a cosmic war machine known as the Unmaker forced Doctor Strange to create a magically induced electromagnetic pulse that permanently shut down all electronic devices, plunging the world into darkness. Now, from the moment the mutant Apocalypse became aware of the Unmaker and the celestial level power the ancient machine possessed, he made it his mission to reawaken it and claim that power for himself. Now, knowing that he couldn't accomplish that by himself, Apocalypse kidnapped many of the world's greatest inventors and used the Purple Man's mind control abilities to force them to create a device that would allow him to merge his mind with the Unmakers. Now that is all really hard to follow, and I'm sorry, but when the heroes made their way to Europe, where Apocalypse was doing all of this, they were met by Deadpool, who acted as their guide, bringing them all the way to Apocalypse's setup in Paris. With Purple Man controlling a whole squad of mind-controlled heroes, the good guys were gonna have a hard time fighting them, except out of nowhere, Deadpool just pops a cap in Purple Man's dome, ending Purple Man's control over not just the heroes fighting them, but the ones inside helping Apocalypse with his machine. Now, Deadpool gets scolded by the other heroes, cause apparently Jessica Jones and Luke Cage were gonna knock Purple Man out, but if they had waited any longer, Apocalypse would have been able to complete his plan, so I'd say that Deadpool was right to do what he did. Number 3, Spider-Man. So kicking off right at the beginning of Deadpool Suicide Kings issue number 4, Deadpool is waking up from a characteristically weird dream where he is Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz with Daredevil, Spider-Man, and Punisher as the Cowardly Lion, Scarecrow, and the Tin Man, respectively. That all comes to an end with Tin Man Punisher taking out a little munchkin and Deadpool waking up in the Essex house distraught and met by Daredevil and Spider-Man. Now, in the previous issue, Punisher had just blown the head off of Deadpool, so in his re-healing state, Deadpool is still working to get some of his synapses firing, and Spider-Man makes the little joke of, quote, "So what was your excuse before your head exploded? Ha ha ha," which is kind of funny actually. But then Deadpool says Spidey should be off facing one of his mortal enemies, like the 90-year-old Vulture, or the "hey everyone, I'm really tall, I fight on stilts, Stilt Man," or whatever the hell Gibbon is supposed to be. But then Deadpool goes even more obscure with a reference to the villain Mindworm, who was a big-headed mutant that fed on people's emotions, and then he referenced the kangaroo. Now, of course, Spidey had his own little jabs back, but it kind of feels like when you're the kid getting roasted and you try to come up with anything to try and gain some dignity back and it doesn't work. That's what happened. Number 2, The Punisher. Now, sticking with that same comic, and even actually that same issue, now closer towards the end, Deadpool comes into contact with the Punisher, who, if you remember and were paying attention, it's cool if you weren't, in the previous issue had blown off Wade's head. Now, this was for a crime that Wade did not actually commit, so when they next come to blows inside of a club, Wade is a bit more prepared. Seeing Punisher in a reflection on a mirror, Deadpool is able to give Frank a good old kick in the gut and then send him flying out of one of the club's doors into an alleyway where the fight carries on, and honestly, it's pretty close and a very ruthless fight. Deadpool kind of has the upper hand in his speed, but they both get knocked to the ground. For me, it's the moment where Deadpool is is on the ground and he sees Castle as Satan for like a split second, he grabs Punisher by his hair and just slams him face first into the pavement, breaking the guy's nose. In return, Punisher bites off Deadpool's nose, and the whole fight sort of ends in a draw when Punisher finds out Deadpool is innocent and they go off to interrogate some criminals. Now this is the main humbling moment in my opinion. Frank is interrogating a criminal who is clearly lying, but before Frank can do anything, Deadpool blasts the guy's foot off, and when Frank asks why, Deadpool says, "Because you were going to do it, and this is my book," leaving Frank completely confused as to what's going on. And in at number 1 today, it's Captain America. The villain Dr. Bong was a goofy villain, even during the Golden Age. He has a metal ball where his left hand should be, and he uses it to create concussive blasts by striking the appendage against his bell-shaped head. That's actually what he does. Luckily though, for him, in 2010's Deadpool Volume 2, the villain was reimagined just a smidge more threateningly, having cloned a team of regenerating superheroes and also revealing himself as Deadpool's former therapist. One of these clones was Captain America, so yes, this wasn't the genuine Captain America, but he had the same appearance as the original, and seemingly he had the same abilities as well, and Deadpool sure thought he was the original. The two of these guys fought in a fair bout at first, but Deadpool felt rejected and hurt by Cap in issue number 28. After the fight is interrupted when Deadpool clearly had the upper hand, Dr. Bong demolishes the building they're all in. When everyone comes back to again in the next issue, Deadpool has everyone tied up, including the Captain America clone and the original Captain America. Through some clever interrogation and deductive reasoning about the injuries both of these Caps has sustained, he realizes that one Captain America had healed from his injuries and the other had not, making the first one Cloney McCloneface, and Deadpool blows that face off. It is bad. Number 10. Thor. Look, Wolverine may be a pretty quick to anger guy, he may go feral once in a while, but he is not an idiot. The problem is he seems to be rather prone to being mind controlled, brainwashed, and otherwise turned on his allies. One of those allies who quickly helped Wolverine back to his senses was Thor. Wolverine stands not even a slight passing hope of facing off against Thor and being able to come out on top, and yet in 2009 we still got the Wolverine vs. Thor comic book. Essentially, Loki using his magic made Wolverine believe that Thor was actually his nemesis, Sabretooth. Wolvie did actually put a few licks in on Thor, having a greater amount of speed than the God of Thunder, but Thor has got strength, durability, a massive unbeatable hammer, Asgardian physiology, control over lightning, oh he can fly, and did I say he has a massive unbeatable hammer? Oh yeah, and he's a god. So, after he gets fed up with Wolverine's mad ramblings, he swats Wolverine down to the ground, flies up in the air, and calls down a massive lightning bolt that puts Wolverine down and knocks him back to his senses. Number 9. Black Panther. In the aptly named Killable story arc, Wolverine deals with his own mortality as his healing factor is taken away from him. The force that got rid of Logan's power was also having a mind-controlling effect on other heroes, and the source looked to be pointing toward the home of Black Panther, aka Wakanda. Upon meeting Black Panther in Wakanda, he assumed the hero was under the control of the said virus, which was a dumb assumption to make, but superheroes have to fight each other, them's the rules. The thing about Wolverine is, his entire fighting style is based on the fact that he can take untold amounts of damage. He can be as reckless as he wants because he isn't really in much danger. But, as T'Challa points out, that is not the case here. After slapping around Wolverine with some relative ease, he convinces Logan that he is indeed not mind controlled and that Wolverine is being the big old dum-dum, because he is. Number 8. Storm. Storm is the kind of mutant who not only has the raw power to beat Wolverine, but in the story we are talking about today, she was able to reduce him down to a charred skeleton, completely taking his life. This is the extremely short-lived X-Men Forever. The series kicked off in an exciting fashion by having Logan wiped out with his remains being discovered in Central Park, and the heroes having a bit of a mystery as to who did it. While everyone assumes it was Sabretooth somehow, the culprit has soon revealed itself to be a now evil Storm, who completely wiped Wolverine's skin and flesh from his bones when he discovered her evil ways. Unfortunately though, fans wouldn't ever get the chance to learn why this happened properly since the series was cut short before the answers were actually revealed. Number 7. Iron Man. We all know of the famous Hulkbuster suit, but would it just blow your minds if I told you that Iron Man has actually defeated the Hulk without it? Yes, That is right. In Iron Man issue 132, our Golden Avenger faced off mano-a-mano against the strongest Green Avenger, and when I tell you this was one hell of a fight, I ain't lying. After an attempt at helping Bruce Banner results in the Hulk persona emerging, Tony dons his suit and protects his employees. The fight goes from Stark Industries to underwater to an Air Force base, where the two basically play baseball with a luggage carrier and Tony's favorite jet. The resulting explosions stunned the Hulk, and in that moment, Tony mustered every bit of solar and reserve energy he could, overriding the safety protocols of his own suit to hit the stunned Hulk with a singular, massive punch that knocked out Hulk and killed that suit of armor completely.
Number 6, Spider-Man. Not only has Moon Knight very physically humbled Spider-Man from the Ultimate Universe, or rather I guess I should say the old Ultimate Universe anyway, but he's also humbled the Spider-Man of Earth 616 in a very personal way. At one point, Mark Spector adopted certain personas which acted as additional split personalities as part of his dissociative identity disorder. You might be familiar with Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley, and Mr. Knight, but these personas were unlike any of those that Moon Knight sometimes adopts and uses. But these personas that I'm talking about here were unlike any of those others that Moon Knight sometimes adopts and uses that you probably are familiar with. These were people that existed separate from Mark, who he was basically impersonating, other heroes, one of them being Spider-Man. He donned Spider-Man's costume, literally impersonating him as he fought against the criminal underground of LA. At one point, this prompts Spider-Man, who was wrongfully, of course, getting critiqued for some of what Mark was up to ask Mark if he indeed dressed up as him and attacked an adult nightclub, to which Mark confirms, yes, he did. A little. Number 5, Captain Marvel. This one was particularly brutal, especially for me as a Carol fan. Another hero who was targeted during the Age of Khonshu story in the 2018 run of the Avengers was none other than Captain Marvel herself, Carol Danvers. Carol and Tony, aka Iron Man, were the last line of defense when it came to protecting the power of the Star Brand, which Khonshu wanted most of all. And when Moon Knight came to collect, he made surprisingly easy work of Carol here. He used the powers of Ghost Rider to basically incapacitate her, seemingly trapping her in the trunk of Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider car. But as embarrassing as that predicament was for Captain Marvel, at least it was only very temporary. She quickly recovered, escaping from the trunk and flying in to save Starbrand and Iron Man, who according to Moon Knight looked like he was ready to consider handing over the young Starbrand host to Moon Knight and Khonshu due to the threat of Mephisto. In fact, even later, Iron Man's like, whatever you do, like, just you keep Starbrand. I probably shouldn't hold on to her. Number 4, Khonshu. I don't know if we exactly consider Khonshu to be a hero per se. He's kind of more neutral. He's done some good and often acts from a place of, believing, I would say, he's doing what is right, but he's not always correct about that. And sometimes even his best of intentions lead him to doing morally questionable things, let's say. Like in Age of Khonshu, when he struck out against the Avengers. He did this because he believed it needed to be done to defeat Mephisto, believing he needed to conquer Earth to, in essence, protect it from the Mephisto army that threatened to take control. So he was doing all this to, protect Earth. However, he was kind of wrong in that, because also conquering people, is that protecting them? Not really. And in the end, this prompted even his own avatar, Mark Spector, Moon Knight, to turn on him, with Moon Knight winning over the power of the Phoenix Force and using his own 2 fists of Khonshu to help defeat the Moon God. Or rather, his fists of Phoenix, really, at that time, I should say. Number 3, Daredevil. These two have a brief fight in the 1980 series of Moon Knight in issue number 13. Here, Daredevil is hot on the trail of a villain known as the Jester. Unfortunately, Moon Knight decides to interfere as he cannot allow Dee to apprehend this criminal yet. He cuts the zip line that Daredevil is using to cut across part of the city, and Daredevil stumbles, or rather falls, sort of tumbles into an arcade, which discombobulates his radar sense, because as we know with Daredevil, he really needs his hearing to actually be able to see, making it pretty much impossible for him to see, or it's pretty wonky in that arcade due to all the arcade noise. The two get in a scuffle, and while Dee doesn't do a terrible job, I would say, of fighting against Moon Knight, considering at this moment he truly is really blind as a bat since his radar sense is affected, in the end he's defeated by Moon Knight, who throws his own billy club back at DD. Fortunately, right afterwards, the two heroes talk and end up deciding to team up, as is usually the way of these things. But still, I mean, you know, it's a Moon Knight comic, so what do we expect when Moon Knight and Daredevil fight? In a Moon Knight comic, I'm gonna expect Moon Knight to win, and he does. Number 2, Thor. Thor and Moon Knight had a very brief fight at the beginning of the Age of Khonshu event, where Thor was quickly put in his place. He does get revenge later on though, but that's a point for another list. The fight didn't last long, mainly because Moon Knight was actually able to wield Mjolnir. But not only that, not really so much wield, he was able to control the hammer. He was able to easily take it for himself. Thor, in fact, is one of the first heroes Moon Knight faces off with during this story, which is made all the more impressive when you consider that perhaps, apart from Hulk, Thor is often considered to be one of, if not the strongest Avenger that we have. Moon Knight simply lets Thor know that the metal his hammer is made of, Uru, believed to be one of the oldest metals in the universe, actually comes from an orb of night. That is a moon. It's moon metal, guys. It's moon rock. And because it is in essence made of that powerful moon rock, it's within Moon Knight's control to manipulate said weapon, since he's an avatar of the god of the moon. Number 1, Moon Knight. Yep. At one point, Moon Knight defeated himself. He actually also faced himself in the very important Moon Knight story told throughout the Avengers, Age of Khonshu. Here, Moon Knight in the end realizes that he kind of might be the problem here and decides that, you know, he's done working for Khonshu. He's kind of done with gods, preferring to pray only to himself. In his final fight in the story against Black Panther, he ends up on the losing side of this fight and begs for Black Panther to finish it. To be clear, this is another fight that happens with Black Panther later on, not the first one that I talked about earlier on. However, Black Panther refuses to take Mark's life, permanently defeating Mark here. Instead, Mark decides to just finish it himself because he has to finish that prayer. So he punches himself so hard that he's basically reborn as the Phoenix.
Number 10, Rogue. The mutant Rogue first started out as a villain in Marvel Comics. She was part of Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and one of their first attacks on the Avengers involved ambushing a recently returned Carol Danvers. Rogue, who was still learning to use her abilities, accidentally fully absorbed both Danvers' memories and her powers. The attack completely drained Carol of her powers and erased her mind, and then, to add insult to injury, Rogue immediately just chucked Carol off the Golden Gate Bridge. Luckily, Spider-Woman was there and able to rescue her, and Professor Xavier was able to restore Carol's memories, but it wasn't complete. The actual emotional connection to those memories, as well as to her family and her friends, was gone. Carol remembered things, but it was more like watching a show about her life instead of living it herself. Carol regained her powers eventually, but Carol's life was destroyed by a scared young woman who then had to deal with the consequences of her actions and the harm it caused to both of them. Number 9, the Hulk. This one is hilarious, but it does also show that despite what some fans may claim, Carol Danvers isn't necessarily the strongest Avenger around. During 2013's Avengers run in issue number 39, during a little scuffle between the Illuminati and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Avengers team, War Machine comes upon Doc Green, aka the Smart Hulk. Now, as you can imagine, the Hulk is just a bit too much for Rhodey to handle, and so Captain America sends in Carol Danvers, and she comes in spectacular fashion, crashing the Hulk into a massive crater and then pounding on the guy with all of her might, feeding him the left right to the point that she's even a little winded. But in that moment of catching her breath, we see the Hulk is just laying there, hands behind his head, chilling out, relaxing, before he says, "Feel better?" And then he punches Captain Marvel so hard that she goes flying into the sky, through a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, and right out of Earth's atmosphere. And that is an insane punch. Number 8, Cyclops. With Cyclops being a mutant who can fire massive energy beams from his eyes, and Captain Marvel being a hero who can absorb huge amounts of energy, most people would have just believed that Carol Danvers would have any fight between the two in the bag. But Cyclops has something that we don't really think about very often: tactical know-how. Or we can call it plot armor, you pick. Cyclops has been compared to Batman with his use of prep time. So, during Marvel's Contest of Chaos, where Agatha Harkness uses her magic to force the world's greatest heroes into combat against one another, Captain Marvel and Cyclops got paired off against one another. Now, this took place just after a recent team up between the two in X-Men Captain Marvel crossover, Lord of the Brood / Revenge of the Brood. With their battlefield being a small fishing village in Iceland, Cyclops' first attack on Captain Marvel results in her just absorbing the energy blast and not hurting her at all. Now for his next attack, he removes his visor and unleashes his full power on Captain Marvel, and again, this only makes Carol more powerful than ever before, but that was exactly what Cyclops was counting on. Now before Captain Marvel can make the next move, he reminds her that if she uses her powers now, she'll wipe out him, but also everyone else in not just Iceland, but all of Scandinavia, just like she almost did in a pretty personal moment he learned about from their previous encounter. He basically blackmailed her.
At number 7 is Vision. In an alternate timeline straight out of a dystopian future, Ultron is calling the shots, and the entire world is caught up in the crosshair. And our beloved heroes are grasping at straws for a way out. But here's the kicker. Captain America, usually the guy with a plan and a symbol of unyielding hope, finds himself at a loss. His iconic shield is shattered, and with it, his morale takes a heavy blow. Enter Luke Cage and She-Hulk. These two heavy hitters step up, boasting the kind of durability that makes them the best candidates for this critical mission. And as they dig deeper, they stumble upon the core of the chaos. But who's at the center of it all? None other than Vision. Ultron is using Vision as a conduit for all this mayhem. Vision is essentially unwittingly contributing to the Avengers' downfall, with remorse eating him up inside. Vision is a figure synonymous with hope and virtue, inadvertently the linchpin of destruction in the Avengers and Cap's spirit. Vision's captivity under Ultron's control became the pivotal factor that taints Cap's unwavering belief in a better outcome. At number 6 is Spider-Man. In a recent issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, the Marvel Universe saw a showdown that had fans buzzing. Spider-Man and Captain America going head to head. See, these two usually fight on the same side, but in this issue, circumstances forced them into an impromptu scuffle. Cap, in his diplomatic style, had tried to talk things out with Spidey, who was wanted for questioning by the US government. But Pete just didn't have the time to deal with questions for the government, as he's trying to rescue MJ from a dimension in which time moves a lot faster. In the midst of this confrontation, Spider-Man manages to pull off a move that even took Cap by surprise. He uses his adhesive palms to swipe Captain America's iconic shield, and then smacks him with it. Cap, a seasoned warrior, is definitely caught off guard. Peter's sneaky move buys him a moment to slip away, a moment that showcases how Spidey's fighting style is instinctive and unpredictable, making it hard for anyone, even a super soldier, to anticipate his moves. What this little skirmish shows is that Spider-Man can disarm even someone as skilled as Captain America in a rather unconventional way. Cap probably never thought he'd lose his shield like that. In the end, it's a reminder of how Marvel's characters can surprise us even when they're on the same side. At number 5 is Daredevil. Daredevil's unexpected victories over heavyweights like Captain America might sound like an anomaly in the superhero realm, but they shed light on his exceptional prowess. The blind vigilante may not possess Cap's brawn, but his unique radar, senses, and combat proficiency make him a force to be reckoned with. He's not just a run-of-the-mill hero. He's taking on big league opponents like Wolverine, Spider-Man, and even Ultron, so it's not exactly a walk in the park to defeat the guy. Daredevil's strength lies in his paradoxical nature. While he may have fallen short against characters like the Punisher, his triumphs over seemingly invulnerable foes like Ultron and the Star-Spangled Avenger himself highlight his resilience and adaptability, testament to his unyielding spirit and unmatched combat skills. His victory over Captain America showcased the depth of Daredevil's abilities, proving that in the superhero realm, sheer strength isn't always the winning card. At number 4 is Gamora. What made this moment stand out was how she not only outsmarted Cap, but also managed to outmaneuver the entire Avengers. Drawing from her extensive combat experience across the vast expanse of the galaxy, she pulled off an incredible feat by deceiving her own comrades to obtain the Infinity Stone. Her motivation? It was deeply personal, seeking to liberate a lost fragment of her soul which was ensnared within the Soul Stone's grasp. Steve Rogers, in his valiant attempt, approached Gamora, hoping to reason with the most lethal woman in the galaxy. Unfortunately, she wasn't in the mood for negotiation. Using the immense power of the stones, she twisted reality, merging Cap and Doctor Strange into a grotesque, helpless amalgamation. They were reduced to mere spectators, unable to do anything but witness her manipulation of reality itself. An intriguing insight to the vulnerability of even the most iconic heroes when confronted by unforeseen challenges from unexpected sources. At number 3 is the Winter Soldier. In the MCU, the Winter Soldier's proficiency in combat proved a formidable match for Steve Rogers. What made this encounter truly compelling was the personal connection between the two. See, the revelation that Bucky Barnes, Cap's childhood friend, was beneath the Winter Soldier's mask. This emotional complexity heightened the conflict as Cap, refusing to battle his friend, demonstrated an unparalleled level of trust and belief in the core of their friendship. The clash wasn't merely physical, but a test of Captain America's steadfast principles. He allowed himself to be vulnerable, clinging to the hope that his friend, even in the grip of the brainwashing, would recognize their bond. This selfless act, refusing to fight back against a lethal force, illuminated the essence of Captain America's heroism. The absolute pinnacle of humility arose when, despite facing defeat, Cap clung to the belief in Bucky's redemption. The final scene where Bucky rescues Cap and leaves him on the riverbank is a poignant symbol of their fractured relationship, leaving audiences with a bittersweet conclusion. At number 2 is Tony Stark. Yes, I know I already brought him up, but I wanted to do it again. In the heart-pounding finale of Captain America's Civil War, we witnessed a powerful moment when Steve Rogers, our beloved Captain America, faced a pivotal choice. You see, the clash between Iron Man and Cap reaches its peak as Cap manages to outsmart Tony and disable his suit. Now, what happens next isn't your typical superhero showdown. Here we witness a significant act of humility. You see, Tony, weakened and wounded, confronts Steve, claiming the Cap isn't worthy of the iconic shield, powerful symbol tied to Steve's identity. Now, despite the injustice inflicted on his friend, Steve surprises everyone. He prioritizes saving Bucky over his personal desires and abandons the shield. This scene echoes a deep message about humility. You see, Captain America relinquishing his shield represents a moment where selflessness triumphs over personal attachment. Sometimes it's about prioritizing others, even if it means sacrificing something important. This selfless act amidst the chaos and the conflict of Civil War stands out as a lesson in humility, compelling us to reconsider our actions and priorities in a complex world. At number 1 is Steve Rogers himself. At the pinnacle of the Secret Empire event within the Marvel Comics storyline, a seismic collision occurred as the iconic Captain America was pitted against his benevolent Hydra counterpart. This monumental clash was a testament to the embodiment of ideals and a struggle between the quintessential symbol of American principles and a corrupted, twisted version of himself. The Hydra Cap, born from the sinister meddling of Red Skull with the Cosmic Cube, had plunged the world into turmoil, wielding a formidable power with shards from the cube, and even wielding the mighty Mjolnir with the hammer of Thor. This set the stage for an epic confrontation between the two embodiments of Captain America, representing conflicting ideologies. Now, the authentic, unaltered Cap emerged triumphant. Despite the odds stacked against him and the seemingly insurmountable power wielded by his malevolent counterpart, the good old Cap prevailed. This victory showcased the resounding strength of unwavering principles and integrity over deception and corrupt influence. The story ultimately revealed the true nature of Captain America's character as the original Steve Rogers reclaimed his identity and smashed his villainous doppelganger with Mjolnir, signifying the restoration of righteousness over malevolence in an epic and symbolic triumph. At number 10 is Tony Stark himself. Perhaps Tony's biggest threat is himself. The story also ties into how the rest of the superheroes managed to forgive Stark after the whole Civil War thing. You see, during a showdown with Norman Osborn, Tony had Extremis in his system, and Osborn wanted to take the secrets locked in Tony's brain, so Tony had to take drastic measures. Essentially, what he did was wipe away his memories by giving himself a degrading neurological condition, not unlike an accelerated dementia, which would eventually wipe his brain clean. After that, they sort of hit the reset button and rebooted Tony with an old backup of his brain from before all the Civil War drama. So this Tony hadn't got tangled up in all that mess yet, thus making him oblivious to his actions during the time of Civil War. The other heroes had to let go of blaming him because technically he hadn't done the stuff they were mad about, even though, let's be real, he probably would have done it all over again if given the chance. Tony got a clean slate, but everybody knew he could mess up again. That's the thing about heroes, they forgive but they don't forget, and with Tony Stark, there's always that shadow of doubt looming around. At number 9 is Spider-Man. This is probably one of the most creative ways Tony's been taken out. In an alternate Back in Black timeline, tragedy strikes when Mary Jane becomes the victim of a sniper hired by the Kingpin instead of Aunt May. You see, in the original story, Aunt May survives the attack, but in this timeline, MJ was hit instead and perished instantly. Consumed by loss and rage, Peter Parker, fueled by vengeance, takes a dark turn, hunting down the sniper responsible for MJ's demise and ending him, confessing to Aunt May before adopting profiting the black suit once more and targeting Wilson Fisk. Despite efforts from Iron Man and the Avengers to intervene, Peter's overwhelming emotions blinded him. He confronts Iron Man in a heated clash where Tony Stark attempts to reason with him. Ignoring Tony's pleas, Peter forcibly redirects Iron Man's own hand repulsor towards his chest just as he's about to use his repulsor ray, causing Tony to unintentionally destroy his own arc reactor. Pretty freaking clever. Exploiting this moment, Peter uses his webbing to strip off Tony's armor, rendering him defenseless. With Iron Man out of the way, Peter continues his pursuit of Fisk, leaving Tony unable to prevent the imminent danger posed by Peter's unchecked fury. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. And number 8 is Cable. This one's super badass because it's yet another example of Stark's own genius being used against him. You see, Cable travels backwards in time to Earth amidst the Avengers vs. X-Men tussle, fiercely protecting Hope, whom he considers his daughter. In a confrontation with Tony, Cable urges him to back off, but Tony, being Tony, just refuses. The clash begins, showcasing Cable's plight as he's infected with a technovirus slowly taking his life, but you see, Cable wears an Iron Man chest plate and fires a beam at Tony. And the twist here is that Cable snarkily notes that he's using Stark's own tech against him that Tony hasn't even invented yet, giving Iron Man a taste of his own medicine. After exchanging blows, Cable emerges triumphant, leaving Tony in his wake. Super fun to see Cable use Tony's tricks against him like that, all in the name of protecting his daughter.
Number 7, Scarlet Witch. Now for this point, we are going to be stepping away ever so briefly from the comics to talk about the MCU. Taking place in the Multiverse of Madness in the alternate world of Earth 838, instead of Carol Danvers, this live-action Captain Marvel happened to be Maria Rambeau, the mother of Monica Rambeau and the best friend of Carol. She was certainly powerful, assuming she underwent the same process that gave Carol her powers. However, she was not powerful enough to face the Scarlet Witch. Hot on the trails of Doctor Strange and America Chavez, Wanda Maximoff of the main cinematic universe possessed her alternate counterpart and went on an absolute warpath where she wiped out this world's entire squad of Illuminati. To her credit, Rambeau held out the longest of the entire team. After Wanda threw her through a wall and then wiped out Captain Carter, Captain Marvel came up and put up a good old fight, putting her cosmic energy against Wanda's chaos magic, but she was overpowered and then squish-squashed by a statue that wiped her out for good.
Number 6, Joelle. Is Joelle really a superhero? Well, she's a superpowered person, and while she is also a thief, I don't think her motives are necessarily bad here at all, so I'm gonna count her, okay? I just like Joelle. She's fun, she's quippy, she's sassy. I like her. And she isn't focused on hurting anyone, really. Actually, Joelle actively shows that she wants to make sure that no one else gets hurt because of her, which seems pretty heroic. Joelle was the woman that Remy met up with in his own series, Gambit, volume number 5, out of 2012. Throughout the series, Joelle is constantly putting him in his place. While she claims she needs his help to get a cure for her daughter, what she really wants is something that will end her life. Her power is eternal, and she no longer wants to continue on after suffering too much loss. Personally, I love how much she schools and teases Gambit throughout the series, and I am really sad that she was such a short-lived character, because she was pretty cool. Number 5, Wolverine. We're talking about The Lost Trail, and at least there is cover art for this podcast though, so we can show that. That's one image we have. The Lost Trail is a follow-up story to the previous Wolverine podcast, The Long Night. While in Long Night, Wolverine is mainly a mysterious figure for much of the story, who is a suspect in some trouble that happened up in Alaska. In Lost Trail, he is very much one of the main characters as he ventures down to Louisiana and the Bayou to find his missing past love, Maureen, while also helping a teenage kid, Marcus Baptiste, look for his ma, who, along with their mutant-based community, also went mysteriously missing. During his time in Louisiana, he runs into his former colleague Gambit, and also at one point is forced to fight Gambit. Gambit at the time was being brainwashed by Mastermind, FYI. Wolverine successfully schools him, breaking his bow staff and knocking him out with, well, a single punch. Poor Gambit, everyone is always breaking his bow staff. That just happens a lot. He must have an endless supply of bow staffs. Number 4, Rogue. During the Rogue and Gambit miniseries, Rogue humbles Gambit in a different sort of way. In regards to his smooching abilities, Rogue, hitting him where it hurts. Rogue really knows how to take Gambit down a notch. I think this went down in their team-up miniseries, Rogue and Gambit, not the most recent one, the one that happened before that, because there's been a couple of those. Gambit confronts Rogue about hearing that she had kissed Deadpool, sharing that news spreads fast among the X-Men gossip grapevine. Rogue attests that she personally knows that, as she has received many concerning calls regarding Remy's behavior over the years. fears. She then goes on to suggest that Deadpool, due to his lack of face, may actually even be a better kisser, because he tries harder than Remy does, implying that Remy skates by on good looks as opposed to skill in the romance department. Boom. Mic drop. Number 3. Emma Frost. Emma Frost definitely put Gambit in his place when he and Rogue were having some romance issues. Gambit and Rogue had been depowered together, but when their powers returned, they kinda struggled to return to a life of, well, pure celibacy. They reached out to Emma Frost for help, who consulted with them and attempted to find a safe space where they could come together telepathically, so not physically in the real world, but kind of physically in their minds. Through her therapy, they were able to be in the same space and touch without danger, except for the fact that their own fears around intimacy and the status of their relationship actually did keep them apart, acting like blocks in their mind. Initially, Rogue almost killed Gambit in the telepathic state, and another time he imagined Rogue as one of his students who was actively attempting to pursue him. This prompted Remy to freak out, and Emma slapped him back to reality. When Rogue picked up on Gambit's feelings, she called him out on his baggage, with him retorting that if he was with his student Fox, who was really Mystique in disguise unbeknownst to them both, to make it a little less creepy, but still it's pretty creepy, he wouldn't have to deal with telepathic therapy. So there, Rogue, putting the blame back on her. And after Rogue, of course, stormed off, Emma was there to call out Gambit for making this way worse with his response to Rogue's comment. Emma truly seemed frustrated with both of them, to be honest, although perhaps more so with Gambit. And I mean, Gambit was the one that she slapped in that issue, so. Number 2. Captain America. To be honest, Gambit actually gave Cap a pretty good run for his money here, but it sadly was not good enough. In Avengers vs. X-Men issue number 2, we're starting off with a fight between the X-Men's Gambit and the Avengers' Captain America, Steve Rogers. Why are these two fighting? Well, because of a larger issue at hand. Avengers vs. X-Men was really all about a conflict surrounding the Phoenix Force. Basically, the Avengers felt like the Phoenix Force was unsafe and should be fought and like destroyed, whereas the X-Men were more open to the idea of using the Force, as they thought it would actually help in bringing back the mutant species that had been drastically reduced in number following the events of M-Day. First, it seems as though Gambit has the upper hand in this fight, with him even going so far as to charge Cap's armor and blow it up, thinking that'll end the fight. But Captain America is apparently tougher than Gambit estimated. He not only survives the explosion, but manages to then knock Gambit out with one punch. Another fight where Gambit's bow staff is tragically destroyed. Rest in peace, Gambit's bow staff. Always destroyed. Number 1. Gambit. I know what you're thinking. Am I putting Gambit on this list twice? Well, sort of. Gambit literally humbled himself in the one case, but in this case, Gambit humbled not necessarily himself as Gambit, but New Sun, who is an alternate version of Gambit entirely. This version of Gambit never had the inhibiting surgery performed on him, and so he was powerful enough to essentially destroy worlds. His powers had grown to the point that he didn't even need to see an object to charge it with energy. New Sun was powerful enough to take on other superpowered beings like the Phoenix and beat them. In fact, New Sun had not only destroyed the Phoenix, but as I said, destroyed his own entire world that he came from. Gambit, because of this, was forced to unlock the full potential of his power once more to take on New Sun. And guess what? It worked! His sense of creativity was actually more attuned and heightened than New Sun's was, and he was able as such to defeat his alternate self. However, in the process, he essentially burned out his powers, overcharging himself. So that's why instead of being Omega level today, he's still considered to be, well, just Alpha. Once more nerfing himself. Although this time not necessarily intentionally, but just doing so in order to save the day. And also, who knows, he might become Omega again one day. Number 10. Deadpool. If you thought Deadpool was a brutal vigilante and sometimes straight up anti-hero, wait till you see him go up against Moon Knight. In Vengeance of the Moon Knight issue number 8, these two face off. And while you might think Deadpool's healing factor would give him a leg up here, it is actually Moon Knight who comes out the victor in their fight. What's interesting is seeing the difference and similarities of these characters juxtaposed throughout their fight. Both are brutal in terms of their methods, both have their own voices in their head to deal with, and both of them are often heroes who are misunderstood. Sometimes they seem like the bad guys while trying to do the heroic thing. Their initial fight here doesn't last long though, as Moon Knight uses his sword to make Deadpool admit defeat, with him surrendering, croaking out, "Uncle." And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider subscribing? Click that subscribe button. It feeds the algorithm. It's good for your soul. You should do it. Number 9. Black Panther. During Age of Khonshu in the 2018 run of Avengers, in issue number 33, Moon Knight faced off against pretty much all of the Avengers. One that he faced directly was Black Panther. Now, when he confronted T'Challa in Wakanda with his army of basically Khonshu worshippers, his presence was so intimidating, in addition to his previous encounters with Iron Fist, and Doctor Strange, that the two didn't even have to fight. Instead, Black Panther simply chose to surrender. Of course, this was strategic, but the fact remains that Moon Knight got what he wanted, a willful surrender from Black Panther without even having to come to blows. Instead, he just intimidated T'Challa into surrendering to him, even if it was, like I said, also possibly a strategic play on Black Panther's side. T'Challa would still end up imprisoned, tormented, and bound, forced to bow down to the power of Khonshu in the next issue. Number 8. Ultimate Spider-Man. When it comes to the Ultimate Universe, Moon Knight is an even more terrifying vigilante. At one point, he faces off against the Ultimate Universe version of Peter Parker's Spider-Man and manages to scare him off with how crazy and how powerful he is, and how scary he is, to be honest. Pretty impressive when you consider that normally Spider-Man would be considered more physically strong and overall more powerful than Mark and his Moon Knight persona. Why were these two even fighting? Well, Moon Knight has mistaken Spider-Man here for a criminal, but even Spider-Man was just intimidated by the hero, and instead of sticking around, opted to just escape the fight instead. It's not a straight-up defeat, but making Spider-Man retreat is not easy to do in most cases, and I personally would still consider if somebody retreats that they kind of lost that fight because they left. Number 7. Ghost Rider. How do you humble the Ghost Rider? How about stealing his wheels? For Robbie Reyes, that's one of the worst things you can do, steal his car, and that's exactly what Moon Knight set out to do and accomplished. While Robbie was asleep, Moon Knight basically managed to jack his car, which also drained Robbie of much of his power as Ghost Rider, as that power was actually tied to his car. Moon Knight simply took the car and drove off into the night with it in issue number 33, part 1 of the Age of Khonshu story from the 2018 run of Avengers. This was also the first part of that story, and to really humble Robbie Reyes, he was only one of a few heroes who had their source of power taken by Moon Knight, all in this one single issue.
Number 6. Cadaverous. Ivan Renz was an employee of Stark Industries alongside his mentor and Peter Parker's parents. They developed the Key, a tech that could potentially bring people back to life, but the experiments failed, sending his mentor to the afterlife. Now, Tony Stark dismantled the unit, and Ivan eventually became the supervillain known as Cadaverous, only ever appearing in the J.J. and Henry Abrams written Bloodline Spider-Man storyline from 2019. Mary Jane Watson loses her life to Cadaverous on the 5th page of the first issue after Spider-Man is swarmed and beaten pretty badly by him and his minions. Then Spider-Man just completely quits. 12 years later, the story has a one-armed version of Peter Parker, who is now the honestly pretty horrible single father of Ben Parker, Peter and Mary Jane's son. After Cadaverous returns out of hiding and kidnaps Peter to use his blood for his evil plans, it's up to the new Spider-Man, Ben Parker, with the help of his friend Faye Ito and old Tony Stark and Riri Williams, to fight Cadaverous and his minions, which includes a cyber-zombified team of Avengers. Number 5. Doc Ock. Okay, so being one of Spider-Man's major arch enemies, Doc Ock has had quite a few different instances of bringing Peter down a peg or two. Today, we're going to talk about the curious case of Otto's adamantium tentacles. So, way back in the day, Dr. Octopus happened to get his hands on some adamantium octopus arms. They were put out of commission and weirdly forgot about for a very long time until they made a spectacular proper return in Spider-Man 1990 issue 18 and issue 19. This is the Revenge of the Sinister Six arc, and not only does Otto manage to make quick work of the entire Sinister Six to take control, even turning the Sandman into glass, when Spider-Man crashes the party, Otto manages to get a hold of him and slam him all over the place, tearing massive holes in Spider-Man's costume and throwing him hundreds of meters away out of the building they were fighting in. He even manages to completely thrash Professor Hulk with these arms too. It's actually kinda nuts. Number 4, the Sandman. Okay, Okay, now look, this does absolutely take place in an alternate Earth, but it takes place on Earth Z, with versions of Spider-Man and Sandman who are canonically exactly the same, with all the same abilities as their usual selves. And that makes it terrifying. Allow me to explain. In Marvel Zombies Returns, the zombie heroes Spider-Man and Luke Cage end up on Earth 91126. Zombie Spider-Man thinks he can cure their zombie virus by finding the Lifeline tablet, but just as he is getting underway with the plan, he gets mistaken for this Earth's normal Spider-Man who went to go change his costume. It's really weird. He's then forced into a fight with Dr. Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, Vulture, Kraven, and Sandman, aka the Sinister Six. Despite trying his best to hold back his hunger, Zombie Spider-Man completely lets go and brutalizes the entire squad of villains, with Sandman literally being the only survivor fleeing for his life. So, when the actual normal Spider-Man shows back up and confronts Sandman, having no idea what just happened, the terrified Sandman does not even try to let this Spider-Man anywhere close to him. He slams him ruthlessly with these massive sand mallets before turning into sand and forcing himself into Peter's mouth, landing inside of his stomach, and then bursting Spider-Man from the inside out. Say what you will about the extreme nature of this comic, but this is entirely possible for the Sandman to do anytime he wants, and that is terrifying. Number 3, Electro. The Marvel Knights Spider-Man comic series was written with a more mature slant than previous Spider-Man titles. After a brutal fight with the Green Goblin in which Peter came out on top, Peter gets home only to find his beloved Aunt May has been kidnapped. His ensuing hunt leads him to the Owl, who tells him that Electro and the Vulture were the culprits. In a rage, Spider-Man finds the two and a massive fight breaks out as they're attempting to steal a big old chunk of change. Once their briefcase of money gets launched open, sending the money flying all over the place, Old Max loses his patience and blasts Spider-Man with a massive electroshock that also causes a huge explosion. Now, with Electro revealing his new costume, he manages to get on powerful blasts one after another on Spider-Man, controlling metal objects and firing them all at Spider-Man and innocent bystanders, blowing up cars full of civilians before revealing how his time in prison has allowed him to come up with new ways to use his powers, including ionizing metal, as he literally slams a semi-truck onto Spider-Man. At the end of the fight, Spider-Man learns that the Owl tricked him and was only using him for his own needs. In that moment of realization, Electro is able to blast him off of a skyscraper, sending him straight to the emergency room. Number 2, Paul. Paul is straight up just a dick. For those of you who do not know, Paul is a very recent addition to the Spider-Man comics, and he is none other than Mary Jane's new squeeze. He also really randomly happens to have kids with MJ? I don't know, but what I do know is that he is a menace. Paul is the son of Emissary, but from a different reality entirely. That doesn't really matter, he did totally take out the villain himself, so he's not really a villain, but he stole Peter Parker's girl and spent 4 years with her due to time dilation, even adopting 2 kids. He's punched out Peter Parker and was defended by MJ herself. He then had the audacity to pay off some of Peter's medical fees out of sympathy, and then invited him to dinner sometime. Paul and MJ stayed together, and Peter has wanted her back the whole time since, and quite honestly, screw Paul, I hate him. Number 1, Spike. Now, most of you may think you don't know who Spike is, but I promise you, everyone knows who Spike is. Spike just happened to be a low-level criminal burglar operating in New York around the same time that Peter Parker started his journey as Spider-Man. This burglar had been the cellmate of the infamous Depression-era gangster Dutch Malone. In the 1930s, Malone lived in New York City's Forest Hills neighborhood. It was long rumored that Malone had hidden millions of dollars away somewhere in that house, and the burglar heard Malone talking in his sleep about where he hid the money. Spike the burglar next showed up in the hallway of a Manhattan television studio just as the young, naive Spider-Man stepped out of his dressing room. Having robbed the studio's office and being chased by security guard Baxter Bigelow, Spider-Man refused to help, allowing the burglar to make it into the elevator and escape. Turns out this would cost him, as this is the very same burglar who would break into that house in Forest Hills, owned by the Parker family, and accidentally take the life of Uncle Ben, teaching Peter an important lesson about power and responsibility. Kicking off the list at number 10 is Civil War. While there was a clear winner in terms of who won the conflict in Marvel Comics Civil War event, that being Tony Stark, in the grand scheme of things, there really wasn't any winner. The Civil War split the entire superhuman community down the middle. Heroes allied with villains, friends turned on friends, people were manipulated into joining a side, and a few of those people passed away, all for an act that would require the registration and regulation of superhuman individuals following a completely avoidable superhuman-caused catastrophe. And while you had Tony Stark coming out on top, he made a lot of enemies along the way, including Spider-Man, and I don't think he ever intended for the death of Steve Rogers. Also, after he came out on top, he was put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. and did a spectacularly bad job, leading to Norman Osborn of all people to take over, ushering in a whole lot more of bad. I don't think really anyone came away from Civil War feeling particularly great. Number 9. The Reigning. After the passing of Odin at the hands of Surtur during Dan Jurgens' Thor run from 1998 to 2004, Thor became the new All-Father of Asgard, and he made some pretty interesting choices during this time. One of the biggest decisions he made was moving Asgard to the skies above New York to inspire mortals with its grandeur and to force the world to be better. This triggers a conflict with the governments of Earth, which ultimately ends with the Asgardians conquering the planet and completely wiping out most of the superheroes. The story now shifts 200 years, where Thor now rules over this dystopian future and is no longer worthy of Mjolnir after killing his human counterpart Jake Olsen, symbolically cutting his ties with humanity. There is no more famine or disease, no borders or religion, there's no need to work, and Asgard's magic provides infinite clean energy for the whole planet. But this comes at the cost of making humans become inferior, with a few also planning to rise up against the Asgardians in order to regain their freedom. Thor marries Amora the Enchantress and they have a son called Magni. Now Magni ends up supporting the humans and the rebellion after seeing how badly the Asgardians are actually treating them. He challenges his father to lift up Mjolnir, proving that he is no longer worthy and leading Thor to question his own actions. After seeing the error of his ways, Thor uses the Odin Force to go back in time, erasing that whole timeline and making sure the Asgardians never take over Earth. For a character as unstoppable as Thor, his defeat here came in a much more poetic way, and it made for a great story. If you're enjoying this part 2, make sure you get yourself over to our channel to check out part 1, and maybe, if you want to, subscribe while you're at it. Always helps us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Coming in at number 8 is Avengers Infinity War. In the MCU, most of the movies follow a simple idea of a hero facing and eventually defeating a villain, coming out triumphant by the end of the film, completing an arc. Even if the villain survives to continue into another film in the cinematic universe, they are still usually defeated by the hero at the end of their debut movie. Well, when we were given the Avengers Infinity War, it marked the first time in the MCU when the heroes, and furthermore, all the heroes together, officially lost by the end of the movie. Despite their best efforts to stop Thanos from acquiring all the Infinity Stones to complete his mission, he still managed to put them all into his big golden gauntlet and snap out half of the life in the universe. He left the heroes in shock of what even just happened as they watched their friends turn to dust. And when we meet them all again in the next film, Avengers Endgame, they've all been left reeling and trying to move forward from such a massive defeat, which led to one of their greatest victories. Number 7. Shazam in Injustice. In the Injustice game, Superman is the tyrant ruler of the Earth. Most of the other heroes have either joined him or joined Batman as part of an effort to thwart Superman and bring him down. One of the heroes who remained on Superman's side was actually Billy Batson, Shazam. This is surprising to pretty much everyone, but seeing that Billy Batson is only a kid, more susceptible to some manipulation, it starts to make more sense. It also makes it very brutal when Superman takes down Shazam for turning on Superman and mentioning the now dead Lois Lane. Superman takes down Billy frighteningly quick, using his frost breath to freeze Shazam's mouth shut, stopping him from using his signature phrase, and then melting his brain through his eyes with his heat vision. Now I don't know if this would actually work in any other continuity. I don't see why not, but Shazam has proven himself more than capable to take on Superman. Either way, it made me immediately hate this version of Superman, and it made me pretty darn sad at the same time.
Number 6. She-Hulk. She-Hulk doesn't need to fight Thor to humble him. She just has to look at him the right way and and call him out on his feelings. These two were an item for a while in the previous Avengers run in the comics. Their relationship came about from their bonding on the Avengers team together, and likely due to them both being super fun-loving characters who also honestly both love a good fist fight. They are both powerful characters who aren't afraid of having fun, and Thor of course was not intimidated by Jen's strength as She-Hulk, but instead admired her for it. Of course, that isn't to say the couple didn't have their challenges. At one point they almost broke up because Jen wasn't sure if Thor loved her solely for her She-Hulk persona and appearance. Thor was actually humbled by Jen, who actually called him out on this, but she was then reassured that he loved her for who she was entirely, both as Jennifer Walters and as She-Hulk, which he admitted he saw as basically one and the same. Super cute. While I was never a big fan of this relationship when it was happening, I have to admit that every time I return to it in the comics when I'm talking about it here on Top 10 Nerd, I gotta say, it makes me more and more a fan of it, and I get it more and more every time I return to it. I just think maybe these two could be shipped together, maybe it would really work. And now I'm like, man, now that relationship's gone. I love how when there's ships that I come around to after the ship has already happened. That ship has sailed. Number 5, Sentry. This one didn't happen in the main continuity, but as is implied in this what if the conditions were right in the main continuity, it could have very well gone down like this. Sentry is often thought of as the Superman of the Marvel Universe, or one of them anyways, so it would make sense that he'd stand a chance against Thor, as Superman in the comics is basically a godlike figure. However, when these two faced off during Dark Reign's Siege story, it was Thor who came out on top. Now, in the What If comic centered around Siege, Sentry instead kills Ares earlier on, which means that when Thor comes to face him, he actually isn't as exhausted from that immediate fight, which is what happens in the main continuity. This means he has enough stamina to not only defeat Thor, but also to destroy, get this, all of the Avengers besides. Yeah, Sentry is super powerful, and I do believe he could take Thor in a fight. Number 4, Scarlet Witch. I'm not surprised that Wanda could take Thor myself. Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful heroes in, I would say, the entire Marvel multiverse after all. However, some might be surprised by this, especially when you consider that Thor is also partly connected to the realm of magic, and especially if you consider that, Wanda is a magic user, so she's kinda squishy. Of course, Thor doesn't typically tend to use magic to fight, and Wanda being squishy, I mean, you gotta get to her first. Now, Thor does have something magical that he could use here, and that would be his hammer Mjolnir, but that was not enough to save him from Wanda's spells when she was forced to turn on her friend and fellow Avenger after he'd been mind controlled by Red Skull, who was using Professor X's brain at the time. Yep, that's what happened, that was the whole thing. Scarlet Witch managed to use her powers to hold Thor back, preventing him from hurting her or any other heroes or villains. And I would say she did so pretty successfully. Personally, I would say Wanda could beat Thor if she wanted to. Just normally they don't have to fight because they're friends. Number 3, Phoenix. The Phoenix is one of the few heroes who succeeded in destroying Thor. I mean, it's hard to compete with the sheer impossible force of the Phoenix. This time around, it wasn't just one person who took down Thor as the Phoenix instead. It was Thor against 5 individuals with the power of the Phoenix Force, which was split between them, who each honestly handily defeated him. The group of Phoenix-empowered heroes who he went up against included Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magik, and Colossus. In fact, at one point Colossus was even seemingly able to separate Thor from Mjolnir, not an easy feat. Also, if Thor faces off against the Phoenix, who's kind of like his mom as well, does that mean that he got schooled by his own mom? Is that what that means? Gotta ask. Number 2, Hulk. Hulk and Thor are 2 of the greatest rivals in the comics. Now sure, they're both heroes, and sure, they're both friends, but that doesn't mean that they have not gotten into a fight or 2, or several, or well, a bunch. Sometimes these fights can even get pretty serious, sometimes they just are carried out to settle once and for all which one of them is the strongest Avenger. So, who really is the strongest Avenger? Well, while many of the fights that I've read show Thor coming out on top, there have been a few times when Hulk has proven that he really is the strongest there is, even against a cosmic god who wields a magic hammer. In fact, Mjolnir tends to be one of the greatest challenges that Hulk often faces in his fights against Thor. But in one fight featured in the Hulk Let the Battle Begin story, Hulk finds a way around this by simply not trying to move the hammer itself, but instead Thor's own arm that's holding the hammer. In this way, Hulk is able to basically make Thor hit himself with his own hammer, knocking himself out. Pretty good go around. Pretty smart, Hulk. Number 1. Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill humbled Thor in his very first fight against him. The two faced off when Beta Ray Bill mistook Thor for an enemy, threatening his people, survivors from his homeworld who were basically searching for a new home. The two fought and Bill won, initially even claiming Mjolnir for himself as spoils from their fight. Of course that would all be corrected, and then they'd become friends, but hey, Beta Ray, he got it.
Number 10. The Hulk. Now we're starting off this list with a big one. I could have easily chosen all of my spots from when Deadpool killed the Marvel Universe, but while Deadpool has defeated the Hulk and many others, that's not actually canon. But luckily, we do have a canon example of when Deadpool defeated the Hulk. This took place in the 1997 volume of Deadpool in issue number 4, when Deadpool needed to challenge the Hulk to get some of his blood in order to counteract the gamma radiation that was affecting Deadpool. The Hulk at this time was making Duck Key his own little paradise, and Deadpool, scared out of his wits, went in this fight just trying to ask for some of the green stuff coursing through the Hulk's veins. Unsurprisingly, the Hulk was not about it. After trying his darndest to get what he wanted, the Hulk was just a bit too much for Wade to handle, so he came up with a cunning plan. As the Hulk jumped up into the air, probably planning to squash Wade when he came back down, Deadpool positioned a broken post on the ground just so perfectly that the Hulk wound up impaling himself right on it when he landed. Now normally this isn't supposed to be possible, and Deadpool makes note of that fact, but apparently the Hulk was a little sick at this point in time, and Wade gets what he wants and gets the heck out of Dodge while he still has the chance. Number 9. Black Panther. So basically what happens here in Black Panther vs. Deadpool number 4 is that Mr. Poole heads to Wakanda to steal a bit of vibranium to help heal a mailman. Yes, that is the actual reason. Okay, so Black Panther manages to de-head the merc and then put him back together, restraining him and going through his stuff, particularly his utility belt pouches, in a Wakandan lab. Now as these two are having a very entertaining back and forth, Deadpool reveals that he has pulled a fast one on T'Challa, as he has some C4 in one of those pouches on a timer that is about to go off. Which it does, since there are way too many pouches for T'Challa to find it in time, which is hilarious. Wade actually ends up grabbing a red ceremonial Wakandan necklace and putting it on. Now this was actually a prototype Panther habit. The suit analyzes his DNA, and since Black Panther has everybody's DNA on file, it bestows itself onto Deadpool. It remakes itself on Deadpool, adapting to his usual color scheme and the weapons that he likes to use. Christening himself Pantherpool, or Dead Panther, no, Pantherpool, Pantherpool's better. It also pretty much brings him up to par with the true Black Panther, which is proven when the two get into a bit of fisticuffs, until Wade's pocket-sized teleporter activates and he teleports to the Great Mound, aka the Vibranium Mine of Wakanda, which he then accidentally teleports to right outside New Jersey, the whole mountain. Number 8. Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine first met in 1994's Wolverine number 88. Now while Wolverine may be stronger, Deadpool's speed, healing factor, his skill in combat, and his absolutely buck-wild behavior has allowed him to get the drop on Wolverine and do a lot of damage many different times. In their first ever encounter, the Merc with a Mouth ambushes Wolverine while he's checking up on Garrison Kane, who's another Weapon X experiment. Now during the ensuing fight, Deadpool earned his reputation as one of Marvel Comics' most brutal mutants by stabbing his two swords into Wolverine's heart and lungs. Now while this typically wouldn't phase the healing mutant, Wolverine had recently lost his healing factor during a bout with Magneto. Now thankfully for Wolverine, his healing factor had begun to slowly return in the days leading up to this fight with Deadpool, allowing him to survive the wounds he'd suffered and win a rematch later on, but he even needed help to do that. It was brutal. Number 7. Daredevil. Now, I wasn't able to find and read the actual comic that this page comes from, but I do know it is in Marvel Now issue number 11, so if you can give me more context to this moment, feel free to do so down in the comments. Essentially, Daredevil had managed to capture Wade and hog-tie him up. As Daredevil is talking with some civilians, Daredevil breaks his own fingers to escape from his confines. He then asks Daredevil where the nearest hospital is. That would be Mount Sinai Medical Center, about 5 blocks away from where they were. Deadpool tells DD that he better get a move on, as Deadpool then, out of nowhere, blasts one of the civilians in the leg. Now Daredevil is obviously pretty peed off about this, as Deadpool damaged the civvy's femoral artery. But luckily for Daredevil, Deadpool heard Mount Sinai Medical Center is about 5 blocks away. As Deadpool storms off with Daredevil saying this isn't over, all Deadpool can say back in retort is BRB JK LOL. It's kind of funny. Not gonna lie.
At number 6 is Scarlet Witch. Tony Stark's genius mind has led him to create some incredible armor, but he hasn't been able to engineer a suit impervious to magic. Enter Scarlet Witch. In What If Avengers Disassembled, the Avengers rush to Genosha to halt Scarlet Witch and Captain America's world-ending plan. Scarlet Witch effortlessly robs Iron Man of his armor and sends him in the air with her magic, ending the confrontation pretty instantly. And in another clash, Avengers issue number 3, Scarlet Witch, now embodying Famine, unleashes her chaos magic, stripping Tony of his armor yet again. Even after getting his armor back, her magic disrupts it, leaving Tony ineffective for the rest of the battle, saved only by Spider-Man's intervention. At number 5 is Black Panther. Despite Tony's high-tech armor and knack for predicting attacks, T'Challa has caught him off guard multiple times. Black Panther's smarts and martial arts skills put him way ahead in the fight. In Black Panther number 45, T'Challa pulls off a surprise move using Mr. Clean, yes, the household cleaner, on Iron Man. The ammonia in it messes up Tony's stealth armor, and T'Challa goes old school by tracking him down by scent. But the kicker here is that he momentarily stops Tony with the Ultron virus, technically knocking out Iron Man cold. At number 4 is the Hulk vs. Iron Man from Original Sin. See, in this one, Bruce Banner delves into his past through Utatu's eye, peering into his own origin story from this omnipotent perspective. He actually witnesses Tony's hand in sabotaging the Gamma Bomb, and therefore was directly responsible in triggering the blast that first turned Bruce Banner into the Hulk. And let's just say Bruce wasn't too happy about it. Driven by rage, Bruce enhances himself using the Extremis virus to retain his intellect as the Hulk. He then confronts Tony, and despite Tony's lack of memory about sabotaging the Gamma Bomb, a brutal fight ensues where the Hulk, now maintaining his smarts, overwhelms Tony, obliterating his specially designed Hulkbuster armor with a single blow. Iron Man's only escape from the Hulk's wrath is to flee and suit up in new armor to survive the confrontation. At number 3 is the Winter Soldier, a victim of brainwashing, but Steve Rogers, aka Cap, helped him break free from that brain control and remember who he was, Bucky Barnes. And in a pivotal moment following Steve's apparent demise after Civil War, the Winter Soldier sought retribution against Iron Man, blaming him for Steve's demise. The showdown between them escalated swiftly, with Iron Man struggling defensively against the Winter Soldier's calculated moves. Using an electromagnetic pulse, Iron Man tried to fend off his assailant, but the Winter Soldier's strategic maneuvering led to Tony's suit malfunctioning. Cornered and unmasked, Tony faced a chilling moment with a pew-pew pointed right at his noggin. However, leveraging Steve's letter, Tony managed to negotiate for his life, ultimately paving the way for Winter Soldier to take up the mantle of Captain America. And number 2 is Kitty Pryde. In the midst of Avengers vs. X-Men, Kitty Pryde, with her tech skills and power to phase through things, played a major move against Iron Man. In A and X, Kitty and Tony team up against the villain, the Brood. Tony tries to recruit Kitty, showing her around his place, but a sneeze from Kitty births some Brood creatures with her powers. Taking charge, Kitty guides them to where Tony's armor is and phases through the suits during the battle, inadvertently frying them all at once. This left Tony without his precious armor, all thanks to Kitty's unique powers put to good use. And at number 1 is Rogue. In X-Men Legacy number 267, Rogue's unpredictable mutant ability to absorb powers gave her the upper hand against Iron Man. When Tony Stark targeted the school to find hope in the Phoenix Force, Rogue absorbed the She-Hulk's powers, and let's just say, Rogue smashed. Enraged, Rogue amplified her strength with She-Hulk's powers and delivered a heavy blow to Iron Man's suit, a punch that literally went right through him, which should have ended the fight right then and there. However, when that didn't work, she just relentlessly pummeled him until his suit lay in ruins. Now, it's a good thing Tony was controlling the suit remotely, because otherwise he would have been done for.
Number 10, Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom and Spider-Man do not fight in the same weight class at all. However, in their first ever encounter, Spider-Man did manage to get the better of Doom, and that may have stung. So, in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 349 and 350, it did not go well for the wall crawler at all. This time, Spidey was tracking an elderly jewel thief named the Black Fox, who had stolen the priceless Trask Diamond. Black Fox had also happened to barter one of Victor Von Doom's family heirlooms, an emerald passed down to him by his late mother. Once Doom became aware of this transgression, he flew to New York and caught up with the Black Fox at the same time Spider-Man did. When Spidey intervened on the Black Fox's behalf, Dr. Doom did not hold back. Doom nonchalantly thrashed the hell out of the web-slinger, leaving him with his costume in tatters and desperately scrambling away for his life. While he convinced Doom to allow him time to retrieve his old family heirloom, Peter's severe beating had left him concussed, so much so that he even hallucinated Uncle Ben. The beating he took taught Spidey an important lesson about recognizing his own limits. Number 9. Kingpin. Now, I'll admit, we at Top 10 Nerd, like a lot of comic book nerds, love to talk about the time that Peter Parker nearly ended Wilson Fisk's life, beating the heck out of him in prison in front of all of his goons. He embarrassed the heck out of Fisk that day, but that was all to prove that he can, because there have been numerous times where the Kingpin has shown Spider-Man the error of his ways. Take the very first meeting, for example. In The Amazing Spider-Man number 50 and 52, this is the famous arc where Spider-Man gives up being a superhero, and in his absence, the Kingpin jumps at the opportunity. The comic makes it pretty clear that Spider-Man assumes that Kingpin is just some big squishy overweight man. This proves to be a pretty rough mistake. Kingpin is much faster and much stronger than Spider-Man initially realizes, being actually composed of almost entirely muscle. He gets Peter with a good grab and slam, and then out of left field, he uses a gas to knock out the Spider by the end of issue number 51. Now, issue number 52 sees Kingpin's goons putting Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson in an extremely supervillainy chamber, locking them up and slowly filling it with water. Sure, Spider-Man does escape, but even the final fight against Kingpin sees the villain get a bunch of good hits and even escape. Number 8. Mephisto. One More Day is infamous among Spider-Man fans, and understandably so. The story completely retconned Spider-Man's marriage to Mary Jane Watson out of continuity, and it was all thanks to Mephisto. And poor choices by Marvel, but whatever. This was a relationship that had been built up over literal decades, that had been carried over into the movies, the newspaper strip, every other version of Spider-Man. It was arguably Marvel's best romance, and Mephisto took it all away in exchange for saving Aunt May's life. The storyline takes place after Marvel's Civil War crossover, where Spider-Man revealed his secret identity to the world. In the fallout after Civil War, dozens of villains targeted Peter Parker and his loved ones, including Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, and Peter's Aunt May was caught in the crossfire. Desperate to save May Parker's life, Spider-Man went to anyone and everyone to find some way to avert disaster. When no one else came through though, the devil himself, Mephisto, offered Peter a treacherous trade. May's life in exchange for Peter and MJ's marriage. Now, love it or hate it, it happened, and it made Spider-Man give up his greatest love ever. Number 7. Black Tarantula. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know much about Black Tarantula before this day, but now that I do, I actually really like him. He's super cool. So, showing up in The Amazing Spider-Man 432, Black Tarantula seemingly attacks our spider hero out of nowhere, chucking half a chimney at him as his first move. Now, while Spider-Man tries to figure out who the heck this guy is and why he is after Spider-Man in the first place, he is dodging out of the way of optic blasts, massive punches, and even his webs do nothing as Tarantula just rips through them like tissue paper. Spider-Man even has a whole flashback about how Mary Jane wanted him to quit being Spider-Man during this fight, which was interrupted as Black Tarantula smashes through the wall that Spider-Man was standing on. Spider-Man ends up floating down to an alleyway, and while he gets maybe 2 or 3 punches on Tarantula, when the villain gets his hand on Spider-Man's ankle, it's all over. He slams Peter between the alleyway walls and down onto the pavement. He then literally rips off Peter's mask, revealing his bruised face, before telling him that he is sparing him so he can find Norman Osborn's missing child, but when he's done that, Spider-Man needs to leave New York. He then walks off, leaving Peter in the fetal position, counting his injuries and thanking his stars that he's still alive. Number 6, Muhammad Ali. Undoubtedly one of the greatest boxers in the history of the sport, this legendary fighter has won some incredible fights. But what other boxer can claim to have TKO'd Superman himself? After aliens demanded that Earth's greatest champion battle their own warrior, Superman and Ali go one-on-one to determine who will represent Earth in the upcoming fight. With Superman temporarily depowered when he steps into the ring, Ali, with his superior skill, completely puts Superman in his place, with Superman falling to the mat after taking a hail of punches. Afterwards, the pair teamed up to help drive back the invading aliens, and the whole story was published in a special issue back in 1978 and reissued more recently in 2010. Number 5, Shazam. Now everyone knows that Superman is weak to kryptonite. It's one of his few main weaknesses. Another one of those rare weaknesses would be magic. Many magic-wielding superheroes exist in the DC universe, but of all of them, Billy Batson's alter ego Shazam, or Captain Marvel if we want to be problematic, is one of the only main ones that can also compare on a physical level with the Man of Steel. Shazam has been sent out against the Man of Steel on many different occasions, and while his magic does give him a distinct advantage, the fact that he's actually a kid usually means that Superman can outthink or outstrategize him. But then, the magic kind of levels the playing field. Despite that though, Shazam has completely knocked out Superman in 1997's JLA issue 29. Now to be fair, he totally sucker punched Superman, but that was just the first punch. He then followed that up with a few lightning-infused punches that completely floored the man. More recently though, in Batman/Superman 2019, issue number 2, the Joker infected several different heroes with Joker toxin, including Shazam, and he faced Superman mano a mano. And we get a hand-wavy reason for why Superman will never beat Shazam in normal fights. It's simply because every time he goes to punch Shazam, all he can see is Billy Batson, and he falters. Superman is just too much of a good guy to hit Billy, and so he gets hit much harder in return. Number 4, Venom. Now, to be fair, this is back when Venom was not a superhero, but he is now, so fair game, I say. Superman and Venom cross paths in the DC Marvel All Access crossover event in 1996 and 1997. This encounter occurred when the two universes merged temporarily, causing confusion and displacement among characters. Venom found himself in Metropolis wreaking havoc and searching for answers. Now, upon stealing a young woman, Superman intervened to rescue her. Their battle proved to be one of Superman's toughest challenges ever, resulting in one of his most humbling defeats. Venom matched Superman's incredible strength, withstanding the hero's attacks and immobilizing/blinding Superman with webbing, leaving him vulnerable. Superman used his heat vision to free himself, and he pursued Venom, but while Superman landed punches, Venom remained pretty much unaffected. With a vendetta against both Superman and Spider-Man, Venom nearly smothered Superman with his tendrils, pushing the hero to the brink of defeat. It took the combined efforts of Superman, Spider-Man, and Access, a multi-dimensional hero, to defeat Venom finally, with Access utilizing a sonic generator to exploit the symbiote's sonic vulnerability. Venom was ultimately vanquished, but not before showing that Superman had no idea how to handle this symbiote. Number 3, Thor plus the Avengers. The God of Thunder has taken on the Man of Steel before. During the JLA Avengers number 2 in 2003, Kal-El and Thor faced each other in a fierce battle. The Kryptonian was on the losing side of things until he managed to lift Mjolnir and even caught it mid-air. Kal-El won that fight by the skin of his teeth, but he was left bruised and battered, and that was more than enough of an opening for Thor's buddies to do what they do best: avenge him. The Avengers' heaviest hitters, Iron Man, Hercules, Wonder Man, The Vision, and She-Hulk dogpiled on Superman and pummeled him until he was completely unconscious. Number 2, Alfred Pennyworth. I don't care what any of you say, Alfred Pennyworth is the greatest superhero of them all. In the alternate universe where the Injustice games and tie-in comics take place, Superman has turned evil and comes to the Batcave to pay his former ally, Bruce, a brutal visit. After breaking Batman over his knee, Superman finds a new opponent when Alfred intervenes. It sounds like a fight that Superman would win in a heartbeat, but with temporary superpowers granted by a pill called 5U93R, which grants heightened strength and endurance, Alfred knocks Superman to the floor with a punishing headbutt before pounding his face, all while screaming about how disappointed he is in Superman and how Superman has hurt his family. Tell him, Alfred. Tell him good. Number 1, Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apokolips but adopted by the gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Now, Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none, and there have been more than a few times where he has faced the Man of Steel and brought the guy down quite a few pegs. In one story, Death of the New Gods, Orion comes to Earth believing that Hector Hammond had hidden inside Superman's subconscious. Seeing Superman as a threat to the universe, Orion begins the fight with a brutal sucker punch before completely walloping the Man of Steel out of a space station. He's been able to go toe-to-toe with a sun-dipped Superman when the rest of the JLA couldn't do a single thing. He's been flown into the ground by Superman, who then speed blitzed the guy, and Orion just waited till Superman was finished, smiling the whole time before swatting him into the sky like a bug. He's moved so fast that he snatched up Superman before he or Wonder Woman could even react, and then he chucked the Man of Steel into a river. He's one-shot knocked out Superman with his Astro harness, grabbed him, and then teleported away while saying how one day he will finally have a challenge, and that's all without reaching the full limits of his power. The guy is a beast. Coming in at number 10 today is Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter's comic book tale seemingly came to an end in one of the most shocking Spider-Man stories ever. Kraven's last hunt finally sees the Hunter get the drop on Spider-Man. Sticking Spidey in the neck with a dart and then burying Spider-Man 6 feet under, Kraven actually beat his adversary, which only a handful of villains can actually claim to have accomplished. Thinking Peter Parker is down and out, Kraven weirdly then takes on Spider-Man's costume, or a copy of the black Spider-Man costume, and he hunts down criminals. In an attempt to prove himself that he's better than Spider-Man, he defeated Vermin, a villain that Spider-Man couldn't defeat without help from Captain America. Unfortunately, the whole thing still ends in tragedy for Kraven. Spider-Man digs himself out of the grave and renders Kraven's victory kind of moot, but Kraven also had accomplished his main goal by besting Spider-Man, something that not a lot of people can confidently say, like I said. Convincing himself that he has no reason to live anymore, Kraven chooses to defeat himself permanently. Number 9, Morlun. Coming Home was a Spider-Man story written by J. Michael Straczynski that introduced readers to a fresh new mystical adversary named Morlun. Now, Morlun was an energy vampire who thrived on the life forces of individuals who were powered up by animal totems, and the spider totems, like Spider-Man, were his favorite. In every aspect, Morlun surpassed Spider-Man. He possessed superior strength, speed, and thousands of years of experience. Although Spider-Man managed to emerge victorious in their initial encounter, he couldn't deny the intensity of the battle. So, of course, in their second confrontation, Morlun proved to be absolutely devastating. Morlun dominated Spider-Man, leaving him battered and broken like never before. Morlun even managed to send Spider-Man off with a round-trip ticket to the pits of Tartarus. Now, while Spider-Man's demise was only temporary, his return marked a transformation, turning Spider-Man into basically a monster with newfound abilities that actually allowed him to take the victory. This battle stands out as one of the most crushing defeats Spider-Man has ever endured. Number 8, Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the few Marvel heavyweights you just shouldn't cross paths with. Even the heroic heavy hitters know this, but when he rampaged through New York City like an unstoppable force in The Amazing Spider-Man number 229 to 230, Spider-Man had no choice but to intervene. Now, it turns out, getting involved was far more than Spider-Man could really handle. Once Juggernaut set himself in motion, nothing could halt him, and Peter learned this the extremely hard way. Over 2 whole comic book issues, Spider-Man exerted all his might against Juggernaut, and it was all futile, as a regular spider trying to stop a train. Spider-Man could do absolutely nothing, and he got completely pummeled. Now, of course, Spider-Man did eventually take the win, but it wasn't anything he physically did that got him the victory. It was actually his brain that stepped in. Juggernaut actually ended up being caught in wet cement, and I gotta be honest, I really don't think that wet cement would actually stop this guy, but they had to get Spider-Man out alive somehow. Number 7, Doc Ock. Dr. Octopus is one of the Spider-Man villains that has a very serious claim at being the primary adversary to Peter Parker. He has consistently given Spider-Man enough grief to cause wrinkles, but then Otto is also one of the few villains to absolutely defeat his hero. When Otto was beginning to lose his life, he managed to find a way to transfer his consciousness into the body of Peter Parker, while transferring Peter's consciousness into his failing body. Peter ended up completely passing away, at least temporarily, inside the body of his adversary, while Otto gained an incredibly powerful body and a new, slightly heroic personality, becoming the superior Spider-Man. But Spider-Ock, or Spock as the fans call him, changes things. He took his genius and experience and applied it, making an awesome new suit, spider bots, and mechanical arms. He also straight up took villains to their graves and even single-handedly defeated the Sinister Six, taking the living brain as a trophy. He completely dumps MJ, but starts a relationship with Anna Maria Marconi, who became a popular addition to the Spider-Man canon. He purged Carly Cooper of the Goblin Serum, helped Aunt May walk again, got Peter his PhD, mainly for clout, and built a scientific empire that would make him a multi-billionaire. He made himself a much more efficient hero than Spider-Man ever could be. Or was. Number 6, Robert Downey Jr. The MCU gave us a good look at just why Iron Man is no pushover when it pitted a rage off the hinges Hulk against the newly unveiled Hulkbuster armor created by Tony Stark. Now this fight is awesome. First off, the high-octane speed of it keeps it engaging literally the whole time. Secondly, it perfectly shows how much of a threat the Hulk can actually pose and how absolutely terrifying he actually is. And thirdly, bouncing off of that, Robert Downey Jr. shows us both how utterly terrifying it would be to fight a monster like the Hulk in a suit of armor, but while still remaining incredibly hilarious and delivering every line with a perfect mix of fear, humor, and high stress that the 4-minute and 20-second scene deserves. Like, how could we forget the go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep thing? That's so funny. And bonus points for the end of the scene when the Hulk finally sees the amount of destruction and pain he has caused. It lets us into his mind just a little bit until Iron Man knocks him out cold. Number 5, Hyperion. Hulk has only had a handful of battles against one of Marvel's iterations of a Superman-like character, Hyperion. And funnily enough, this time it's almost always Hyperion who comes out on top. Hyperion hails from a different universe from Earth 616 and is usually the leader of a group of Justice League-like heroes called the Squadron Supreme. Hyperion and Hulk were both on the Avengers at the same time, and the two were pitted against one another in a couple of instances. In Jonathan Hickman's 2013 Avengers run, issue number 3, a brainwashed Hulk is sicked on a Hyperion, and while the battle kind of happens in the background, Hyperion manages to punch the Hulk out of the Hulk, turning him back into Bruce Banner again. Now that is a feat all of its own, but there was another fight more recently in Heroes Reborn number 2 by Jason Aaron. This story found a new Hyperion who had just wiped out Galactus by flying straight through his head, fought off against versions of Gladiator and the Imperial Guard, Mr. Beyonder, and a giant version of Ultron. The last thing he needed to do was stop the Hulk. Hyperion finds him trying to tell a group of kids about how he's not crazy, how history has changed, and how he's really sad, which makes it almost upsetting after the Hulk gets his hands on Hyperion's throat, and Hyperion invokes an executive order and uses his laser eyes to blow holes in the Hulk, taking his life 24 times until he finally stops getting back up. Number 4, Spider-Man. Now, in terms of raw power, Spider-Man stands absolutely no chance against the Hulk. I think his spider sense may give him some kind of advantage, but there's no way he's lasting long in that fight. Unless he gets a power boost in the form of, I don't know, the Enigma Force turning him into Captain Universe, maybe? And that's exactly what happened in The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 328. The Grey Hulk, who yes, is a bit weaker and logical compared to his savage counterpart, is hired by Sebastian Shaw to target Spider-Man, and money is always a good motivator. Unfortunately though, for the Hulk, Spider-Man has been going to the cosmic gym and hitting the cosmic weights. He lands some pretty heavy blows on the Grey Goliath and even blinds him with a new I-beam power. But when some kids are put in danger though, Spider-Man ends the conflict quick by punching the Hulk all the way into orbit and then flying up to save him before he suffocates. Then Spider-Man just stands all confident with his hands on his hips, kind of like this, but like more confident, you know what I mean? Number 3, Havoc. Havoc, who you may know as the brother of Cyclops, found himself in quite the showdown with the Green Goliath in Incredible Hulk number 150. It all started with a little bit of a mix-up. You see, the Hulk thought that Polaris was his long-lost love, Jarella, the Princess of Kai from the Microverse. So in his confusion and a little bit of heartbreak, he whisked Polaris up a cliff, and Havoc, being the hero that he is and also Polaris' boyfriend, rushed to the rescue. In an attempt to fend off the Hulk, Havoc unleashed his powerful energy waves, but here's the thing. This attack did absolutely nothing. It didn't really do anything to the Hulk at all, so it was looking pretty rough for Havoc until he spotted an opportunity. The Hulk, being just absolutely off the chain, decided to pick up a small mountain, like you do. And that's when Havoc hatched a cunning plan. He focused all of his energy waves like a laser beam aiming right at the Hulk's big green forehead. Now this seriously strained the Hulk as he grappled with the weight of the mountain that he chose to pick up like an idiot. The combined stress of the mountain and Havoc's energy waves got to be too much for the Hulk, and he eventually passed out, dropping a mountain on himself. For Havoc, that is a huge win. Number 2, Namor. Namor, the Prince of Atlantis, has a level of strength that I think surprises a lot of people, and it may be because his level of power is closely tied to his proximity to water. When submerged, his strength is unrivaled. He can even lift and throw massive and heavy objects like water-filled ocean liners. So, if the Hulk were to challenge Namor, the smart move would be to battle on dry land. However, the Hulk's not that smart. In Avengers number 3, the Hulk made the error of confronting Namor in the water. And a few panels later, Namor managed to drag the unconscious Hulk to the shore. Namor's water-based advantage came into play once more in Tales to Astonish number 100, where he used it to defeat the Green Goliath. Their powerful blows generated a massive tsunami that destroyed an entire island base. Interestingly though, even in more casual contests, Namor has outperformed the Hulk. In an unconventional power test, the two engaged in a game of underwater chicken in Incredible Hulk number 118, and neither of these guys chickened out as you might expect. But in the end, Namor emerged unscathed while the Hulk was knocked out completely, reverting to his form as Banner. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's The Thing. The Thing and the Incredible Hulk are kind of like the Marvel Universe's version of Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed. I read an article that said that, and I think it's funny and I think it's true, so I'm using it. They share a complicated friendship filled with epic battles, usually resulting in a draw, or the Hulk will take the win. However, back in 1961, The Thing managed to secure a win. It's essential to note that the Hulk was in his gray or Joe Fixit form, which is a lesser known persona. Unlike the Green Hulk, this version, Joe Fixit, is more intelligent and has better reasoning abilities, meaning he doesn't get as angry as quickly. And we all know that the Hulk's strength amplifies with his anger, so Grey Hulk isn't as mighty as the Green version. Additionally, during this particular face-off, The Thing was in his super spiky form, making it a remarkable matchup. In Fantastic Four number 320, Dr. Doom goads Hulk into chasing after The Thing, saying he's powered up and stronger than Hulk is, and you know that's gonna piss off the Hulk. Hulk sets out to New York to defeat The Thing, but gets his butt handed to him. After a slog of a fight that will cost taxpayers a ton, The Thing almost ends up putting the Hulk into the afterlife until he's caught off guard by this really random Hulk robot that just comes out of nowhere. It's weird. I don't know.
Number 10, Bishop. When Bishop shows up on the scene, he is quick to single out Gambit, who he believes to be the man he knows as the Witness in his future. He believes this is why the Witness will not speak or show anything regarding the mutant Gambit, because he is the mutant Gambit, and Bishop thinks he is the one who betrays the X-Men in the future. However, everyone else in the X-Men is very offended by this implication, and Jean wonders if, despite all the drama, they can just still go on their planned picnic. In gloriously 90s fashion, despite Bishop's appearance, they actually do go on a picnic. It is here that Bishop confronts Gambit while he is on a picnic with Rogue specifically. Although Gambit is not down for the count, Bishop does slug him so hard that he goes flying into Rogue. The whole interaction is honestly like comedy gold. It is peak 90s, but one does feel pretty bad for Gambit in all of this. I mean, I always feel bad for Gambit. People always coming in being like, Gambit, you're trash, you're terrible. And I'm like, you don't even know. Like, just give him a second, let him breathe. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love it when we talk mutants, I know I love it, be sure to check out our X-Men playlist for even more mutant content. Number 9, himself. Gambit actually humbled himself intentionally in the comics. If you've ever seen Gambit doing his thing and thought he has the potential to be even more powerful, you would actually be right. Gambit in fact has the potential to be a dangerous level of powerful with his abilities, which is why he actually asked Mr. Sinister to literally nerf him by messing with his brain. Gambit had Mr. Sinister intentionally dampen his powers so that he wouldn't hurt anyone, and in return, for a while, Gambit was indebted to Mr. Sinister and therefore forced to do his dirty work. Number 8, Iceman. It's blue versus gold in this issue, and as a result, Gambit ends up face to face with Bobby Drake's Iceman. While he may have been able to dodge every shot Forge could target him with, and even parry some of those shots back at Forge, when it comes to Iceman, Gambit is quickly and handily defeated as he is knocked out with a solid block of ice. He did not see that one coming, which hits him square on the jaw. Number 7. Black Panther. What a terrible time for Gambit's powers to go on the fritz, oh boy. Right when he's in the middle of a fight with Black Panther. Yet, that's just what happened in Gambit and Rogue's most recent team-up series, Rogue and Gambit Volume 2 from 2023. Here, Gambit and Rogue are accused of kidnapping fellow mutant and friend to T'Challa, Manifold, at the behest of Destiny, who had a vision about how Manifold could basically be the key to saving all of mutant kind. Black Panther doesn't really blame Rogue though here, he actually blames Gambit for corrupting his wife, seeing him as no more than a common low-level thief. See what I'm saying? Gambit just can't catch a break, man. Black Panther pounces at Gambit, and while Gambit manages to get in at least a single hit, his powers then decide to just stop working, which is something Rogue and Gambit have both been dealing with in the desert power loss in that series. And so Rogue steps in to save the day while Gambit creates a distraction so they can just simply escape T'Challa instead of fight him, because they know if they fought him, probably not gonna win, especially if they don't have powers. Number 6. Squirrel Girl. I mean, it was only a matter of time, right? They don't call Doreen Green unbeatable for nothing. This fight went down mainly as the result of a miscommunication between the two. Deadpool thought that Squirrel Girl wasn't registered under the Superhuman Registration Act. However, before they could have a discussion and clear things up between them, first, they, of course, had to fight. Normally, Deadpool is a lot better at fighting than he was here, but as he sometimes does, and as many of us do, he got distracted. He became obsessed with Squirrel Girl's appearance and became fixated on guessing her superhero name and the reason why she appeared to be a woman-squirrel hybrid. His distracted state gave Doreen the advantage she needed to beat him. And then afterwards, they of course were able to talk it out and resolve the miscommunication. Sometimes you gotta swing a few punches first and then sit down and have a little chat. Number 5. Daredevil. Daredevil is not a hero I personally would want to go up against, especially if I was Wade at this time and I was like basically a shapeshifter who looks super questionable. Deadpool underestimated Daredevil and was quickly put in his place. Despite attempting to explain himself, Daredevil still decided to restrain Deadpool, leaving him defeated and bound in the middle of the street at the end of their fight. Number 4. Thor. Deadpool used to love dressing up as Thor, but while people say imitation is the best form of flattery, let's keep in mind that this is a Midgardian saying and not an Asgardian one. I don't even know what the sayings or idioms of Asgard are. Eternal life is like an apple? Is that one of them? It would make sense. So of course, when Thor came across Deadpool impersonating him, he was not too pleased. And look, Deadpool is a pretty gifted fighter and also has that healing factor on lock, but he's not nearly, not even close to as powerful as Thor is. Not by a long shot. So of course, no one was surprised when Thor made pretty quick work of Deadpool with his hammer Mjolnir. Number 3. Spider-Man. Spider-Man even beat Deadpool at his own games. Deadpool sometimes operates on a different level than most other superheroes, or rather anti-heroes in the Marvel Universe. There have been times when he fights simply with the power of his mind, and I don't mean that he's telekinetic or is a psionic powerhouse or anything like that. I mean with his ability to break the fourth wall and escape into a fantasy land, which often manifests somehow in reality. I don't know how that works, but it's a thing. This is what happened when Deadpool fought Spider-Man in the Ultimate Spider-Man animated series. Here, Deadpool was attempting to get a list from Spider-Man that would be extremely valuable if put in the wrong hands, making Deadpool a bunch of money. And as a mercenary, we all know Deadpool does love his money. The two fought and Deadpool ended up using the power of his imagination to try and defeat Spider-Man. But fortunately, Spider-Man, master of quips and puns that he is, was able to turn the tables on Deadpool, hitting him with a book of morals, literally, that made Deadpool reflect on his origins and feel real feelings, which ultimately cost him the fight. Although he refused to be taken into fury by Spider-Man, Deadpool did admit that their fight was going to make him go home and cry himself to sleep. So there is that. Number 2. Wolverine and Sabretooth. Okay, so Sabretooth isn't really a superhero, but sometimes in the comics he's actually been good. Did you know that? Like during Axis, when many heroes and villains had their alignments reversed. Sabretooth was one of the characters whose alignment stayed permanently reversed after the events of Axis. It wouldn't be till later, after he had sacrificed himself in order to save his son, that he would get turned back to his original alignment and become evil again. In the version of the story I'm talking about though, Sabretooth was not really a good guy. Because yeah, we're talking about X-Men Origins Wolverine, the film. Yeah. that film. But I still wanted to include Sabretooth in this point because, as I said, he isn't always so bad, and in this fight, he and Wolverine are actually forced to team up to take down Wade Wilson, who becomes the strangest version of Deadpool we've ever seen on screen as Weapon 11. As Weapon 11, Wade had no mouth to make quips with, and instead of having his two katanas, he had two swords just in his arms. He made for a very weird opponent who also was super hard to defeat, surprisingly, but with Wolverine and Sabretooth both coming out against him, Logan was able to find a window to take him down. Number 1. Cable. Well, these two have had a ton of goofy fights too, and also have had a ton of honestly sweet moments in the comics. This was actually a pretty serious fight that happened between them. It went down during Civil War I. This all happened as a result of Deadpool and Cable being on different sides of this first Civil War. Deadpool ended up on the side of pro-registration and went around trying to round up heroes who refused to register. However, then he came across Cable, who attempted to try and talk Wade out of making this mistake. Deadpool, however, of course, would not listen to reason, and the two were forced to fight one another. Deadpool fired darts at Cable, but Cable's shield caused them to rebound back, making them hit Deadpool, so yeah, Deadpool ended up losing this one. And also, he was kinda on the losing side of that Civil War, to be honest with you. Deadpool is bad luck when it comes to like, which side are you gonna choose? Number 10. Moon Knight. This one was insane when it happened during the Age of Khonshu's story. My mind was blown. Your mind was likely blown, and probably everyone's minds were blown. Everyone who read this, that is. And if you didn't, well, prepare to have your mind blown as I get you up to speed. During Age of Khonshu, Moon Knight turned on pretty much all of the Avengers. Did this make him a villain? Not really. He actually thought he was doing the right thing as he tried to help Khonshu prepare to take down Mephisto, who is, you know, a pretty big bad. However, he was later made aware of the fact that Khonshu wanted to defeat Mephisto so that he, instead, could kinda rule the world and shape it in his own image, turning it into a sort of Egyptian afterlife. So in the end, Khonshu had to be defeated and imprisoned, and Moon Knight instead turned on his own god, working to help the Avengers fight back against him. But before that, Moon Knight was on a mission to collect powerful, heroic artifacts and powers to help him in his quest to aid Khonshu. One such magical and heroic artifact that he needed was Thor's hammer, and he was able to get it as it was revealed that Moon Knight could actually control the hammer, not necessarily because he was worthy, but because of its metallic makeup, being made of Uru, which means it's essentially made of moon rock. Yeah, that's what Uru is. Really old moon rock from the first moon. And the moon is kind of Moon Knight's thing, which meant he didn't need to be worthy to wield Mjolnir. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when we talk about heroes that are getting humbled by other heroes, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. It does feed the algorithm gods. Number 9. Zeus. Love and Thunder might not have been the movie we were all hoping for, but it did have some pretty hilarious moments, and some tragically embarrassing ones for Thor as well. One such moment, which was both, happened when Thor finally met his hero, the god Zeus. However, as the saying goes, never meet your heroes. Zeus decided to remove Thor's disguise and ends up completely removing Thor's clothes as a result. Pretty embarrassing. This leaves Thor completely uncovered in front of Zeus, while everyone around Thor laughs, because he's not just in front of Zeus, he's in front of a whole bunch of other gods. Oh boy. And Valkyrie. And Jane. Zeus isn't exactly a hero in this story, but he also isn't exactly a villain, I would say, either. He's more just like kind of a self-absorbed and stubborn god, which is what ultimately leads him into a conflict with our heroes in the story when he refuses to listen to them. And I'm sure if, you know, we do actually get more Hercules stuff, we're gonna see that it's complicated. The Greek pantheon is just a different pantheon, so. Number 8. Black Bolt. Black Bolt ends up facing off against a venom-possessed Thor in the What If comic, What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man? In this story, the Fantastic Four failed to remove the suit from Peter, as it's too late for them to do so, with the symbiote and Spider-Man being fully bonded. This leads to Peter being drained of all life energy and rapidly aging before the suit jumps to a new host. It possesses Hulk, and when Thor arrives on the scene, decides to instead attempt to bond with Thor. While Thor fights against the alien costume, Black Bolt appears and uses his powerful voice to blast away the Venom symbiote, defeating it and saving Thor from its influence. Through, of course, well, defeating him. Number 7. Hercules. As was implied at the end of Love and Thunder, Zeus is not the only god that Thor faces off against. It seems that the after credits were actually setting up a future fight between the Norse hero god and the Greek one Hercules, son of Zeus. And in the comics, this has actually happened before. Hercules has indeed beaten Thor in the past. While Thor would typically be more powerful than Hercules, I'd surmise just based on what I've read of both of these characters, there was a time when Thor's power levels had been somewhat reduced by Odin, and he challenged Hercules to a fight. And it was during this fight that Hercules actually managed to come out on top instead, so Hercules won that one.
At number 6 is the Hulk. Oh boy, this one's gonna be brutal. In the 1996 crossover, Batman faced the behemoth Green Goliath, and the odds were about as lopsided as a seesaw with an elephant on one end. The Hulk, a powerhouse of rage and raw strength, had Batman teetering on the brink of defeat. Yet, to everyone's surprise, the Dark Knight actually displayed an uncanny resilience. Dodging airborne cars and defying the laws of physics of precarious situations, Batman showcased a level of agility that defied his moral origins. The Joker, usually reveling in chaos, momentarily doubted Batman's survival, urging the Hulk to crush him into a paste. It was a moment of uncertainty that hung in the air like the impending collision of titans. But, in a twist of fate, Batman unleashed a surprising tactic, boxing the Hulk's ears and actually disorienting the colossal adversary, which is quite surprising. The tables turned momentarily, but the Hulk's recovery was swift and furious. Batman, physically outmatched, found himself pinned against the wall by a massive machinery hurled by the Green Giant. Now, in the end, intellect did prevail over brawn, but not without leaving Batman physically battered by the sheer force of his much larger Marvel foe. At number 5 is Jason Todd. Batman's legacy is impeccable, but even the Dark Knight has faced some moments of vulnerability. Take Jason Todd, once Robin, who endured a brutally fatal encounter at the hands of the Joker's crowbar and rigged explosives, challenging Batman's ability to protect his own. Now, in the aftermath, Batman was haunted by guilt, and he preserved Todd's empty costume in the Batcave. But upon Todd's resurrection, he sought revenge, mirroring Batman's methods with a touch of fatal brutality, aiming to bring down both the Joker and Batman in one foul and vengeful swoop. Through meticulous planning, Todd bested Batman, momentarily seizing control. The apprentice turned adversary, he orchestrated a plan that brought Batman to his knees, bringing the Caped Crusader face to face with the end of a loaded barrel, aimed squarely between Bruce's eyes. Now, ultimately, while Todd did win the showdown, his pride ultimately cost him the mission, with Batman coming out on top. Nevertheless, this battle is a compelling twist, showcasing that even the mighty Batman can be outsmarted by his own protege. In the intricate dance of heroism and vendetta, the line blurs, and the student can become the master of humbling the indomitable. At number 4 is Wonder Woman. In the realm of Caped Crusaders, Batman stands as the icon of justice, but what happens when the tables turn? Wonder Woman, with her Amazonian might and unyielding sense of duty, humbles the Dark Knight in Wonder Woman the Hikatia. Bound by a sacred Themysciran ritual, Diana becomes the guardian of a remorseful unaliver, Danielle Wellis. Batman, the ever-enforcer of Gotham's law, clashes with Wonder Woman over justice and morality. The battle that unfolds between them isn't just physical, but also symbolic. Wonder Woman, invoking the ancient ties that bind her, rejects Batman's demand to hand over Danielle. The clash becomes a collision of principles: moral justice versus the eternal vows. The narrative adds layers to Wonder Woman's mythology, showcasing her physical prowess over the formidable Batman. In the end, it's not just rain-soaked streets, but the power dynamics that leave Batman beneath Wonder Woman's literal and metaphorical heel. At number 3 is Green Lantern. In the vast world of superhero showdowns, few moments stand out as much as the time Batman faced off against Hal Jordan. It wasn't a battle of gadgets or cunning strategy either. It was just a straightforward, old-fashioned, punch to the face. Picture this, Batman, typically in control, caught off guard by a sudden, unrelenting right hook from the Emerald Warrior. It wasn't about complex plans or intricate maneuvers or even magic in this case. It was raw power meeting unexpected vulnerability. This story showcased Hal Jordan's strength, not just in constructs and willpower, but in a simple, well-timed punch that left the Caped Crusader on the ground. Batman's aura of invincibility was shattered at that moment, a humbling experience for a hero used to being one step ahead. Hal Jordan's unexpected uppercut spoke volumes about the potency of human connection, even in the midst of cosmic powers. At number 2 is Swamp Thing. In the vast tapestry of the DC universe, the clash between Swamp Thing and Batman stands out as a peculiar chapter. You see, picture this. Gotham is typically a concrete jungle, but it was transformed into a leafy labyrinth by Swamp Thing's botanical prowess. Why? Well, it's a classic tale of love, justice, and the unexpected consequences of interspecies romance. Swamp Thing's wife, Abby, faced legal trouble for her amorous escapades with the Tree Man. The trial brought the Swamp Thing to Gotham, and Batman found himself ensnared in a verdant vendetta. Swamp Thing and his green allies delivered a beating that left Batman battered, but still breathing. Their motive was to ensure Abby's safety and make a point that Gotham's conventional weapons were useless against the forces of nature. In this arboreal encounter, Batman learned that even in his own urban fortress, nature could still turn the tables. And number 1 is Catwoman. This is the very reason why you never want to cheat on a crazy cat lady, even if your name is Batman. Now allow me to set the scene. Batman 355, it's 1983, and Gotham's alleyways witness the aftermath of a love gone sour. See, Selina Kyle, the infamous Catwoman, discovers Batman's new flame, Vicky Vale, and what follows is a visceral confrontation, a snapshot of heartbreak and vengeance. In a frenzy of emotion, Catwoman launches into a ferocious assault, culminating in a superpowered knee to Batman's jaw. The Dark Knight, typically composed, finds himself sprawled out on the floor and disoriented. Catwoman, momentarily unhinged, contemplates the line between lover and adversary, and as she hovers over the edge of tragedy, sanity prevails, sparing Batman from a lethal fate. But don't get it twisted, Catwoman, momentarily blinded by rage, contemplated a fatal finale. "Bruce," she says, "I almost unalived you." I can't say the word, but you know what I mean. "I was that close," she confessed. This was a breakup with a lethal twist, a snapshot of passion turned Perleus. Batman, ever resilient, quipped about his robust jaw, the sole defense against Catwoman's momentary madness.
Number 10, Captain America. Sure, this Captain America wasn't exactly the hero of the story, as we'd later find out the Captain America wasn't really himself, but rather another twisted version that was created by Kobik, fragments of the cosmic cube who fused together to create a sentient being, a little girl. This was due to a misunderstanding where Kobik thought that Captain America would be a better hero if he was basically indoctrinated into Hydra. She hadn't intended necessarily to make him evil, she was just kind of being manipulated by Red Skull, who she actually thought was like a good person, but she was wrong, and she thought Hydra was good. At the same time, Deadpool didn't know any of this and just thought Cap was Cap. He decided to ally himself with Captain America during the events leading up to Secret Empire, but would eventually come to realize that Captain America, aka Hydra Supreme, had really been using and manipulating him. Probably the worst and most humbling of all on our list. This made Deadpool question virtually all of his actions during this period. Not like a punch you in the face humble, but definitely a form of humbling. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, I encourage you, yes you, to click that like button. It really does help us out here at the channel, and it feeds the algorithm. Praise be the algorithm. Number 9, Agent Coulson. So he didn't really get beaten by Agent Coulson, but I think considering the fallout of Secret Empire for Deadpool in retrospect, he would have been humbled by, I guess, his actions against Phil Coulson. And sure, Phil Coulson isn't always a hero in the comics. Let's not forget when he ended up being kind of one of the big bads during the 2021 Heroes Reborn event. That was honestly weird for me to read, but mostly I'd say that Phil Coulson tends to be a hero, like in general. And in this case, he really was trying to be a hero. He had intel on Captain America and believed that Stephen had been compromised, and he was right. He was hoping to get this info out so, something could be done before it was too late, but it turned out that Rogers was onto onto him and sent Deadpool to take out Coulson. While Deadpool was ultimately successful in his mission, it wasn't easy for him to follow this order as he didn't really even know why Captain America needed Phil dead. Later on, he'd learned the truth about Captain America's allegiance when he became Hydra Supreme, and how this Captain America wasn't the same one that we'd always known. This would make Deadpool question everything he'd done during this era, including of course this initial mission for Cap, where it all started, baby. Number 8. Cyclops. Cyclops ended up humbling Deadpool when he refused his offer to become an X-Men member. However, Cyclops would kind of agree to offer Deadpool a place on the team temporarily. But Deadpool would later learn that this was actually only done so that the X-Men could keep an eye on Wade, as basically they didn't trust him. Ouch. After he learned that, after everything he went through to try to help them, he was basically just like, you know what? I don't need you guys. Oh. Poor Wade. So he's left out of the X-Men club. Number 7. Hulk. This one at least isn't too embarrassing for Deadpool, considering he literally wanted to be beaten here. Hulk ended up fighting Deadpool in the 2008 Deadpool series in issue number 38 and 39, and Deadpool actually wanted Hulk to smash him. No, not smash him like that. Although for Deadpool saying this to Hulk, I mean, you maybe never know which version he meant. If he asked you to smash him, you'd be like, wait. Even for Hulk, I feel like I could see the two of them together. Is that weird? I don't know. Deadpool basically wanted to be destroyed, so he told the Hulk that the only way to stop bombs from going off was to beat him up. Deadpool claimed he had a transmitter surgically implanted inside him that would use the electrical current of his body to power itself, sending signals to a new nuke every hour to detonate. Of course, none of this was true. He was just hoping the Hulk would take him out permanently. Unfortunately for Deadpool, despite intentionally losing the fight, his healing factor still went out here.
Number 6. Spider-Man. In All Out Avengers issue number 5, we get to see Spider-Man not only take down Carol temporarily, but he happens to take down an entire squad of Avengers. Or at least he leads them on a merry chase and does more than anyone expected. Now Spider-Man believes that She-Hulk, Black Panther, Blade, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and of course Captain Marvel have all been brainwashed by a guy called the Grand Manipulator, and he has a device called the Resequencer that he's trying to get to a guy at Empire State University who can help them. When the chase begins, he shorts out Iron Man's armor, he dodges over She-Hulk, and then it's Captain Marvel's turn. She grabs him straight by the throat and starts flying up, but then Spidey, out of nowhere, he does something kind of terrifying. Flicking a tiny little capsule into Carol's mouth and apologizing, the capsule activates a web attack that completely fills her mouth and throat with webs that catch her completely off guard. She's freaking out, unable to breathe, as he swings off, telling her not to panic as it will dissolve in about 60 seconds. Number 5. Ratchet. Okay, look, yes, this is a crossover of the Avengers and the Transformers, so we already have to accept that this is just for fun. But this defeat of Captain Marvel is kind of downright pitiful. So basically, as with any good crossover, our two teams of do-gooders, the Avengers and the Autobots, have to have a little fight when they first ever meet, which takes place in issue 2 of the New Avengers / the Transformers from 2007. When the two go to clash in the first few pages, one of the first fights to take place is between Carol Danvers, who is in her Miss Marvel attire, and the Autobot medic, Ratchet. Not only does Ratchet actually defeat Carol, but he does so without even leaving his vehicle mode. When Carol goes in to attack, punching Ratchet's windshield, she ends up getting about halfway into his cab, going off about letting loose like the Kree warrior she is, and all Ratchet does is activate his airbags, completely trapping the Kree warrior with her legs flailing halfway out of the driver's side window, as he says, and I quote, "Standard human containment techniques do not always preserve the subject's dignity." It's utterly ridiculous and kind of hilarious and embarrassing. Number 4. Tigra. Taking place in 2006's Miss Marvel, specifically issue number 19, when the Puppet Master decides to use his mind control powers to force heroes to fight each other to the pearly gates, arena style, Miss Marvel, Sleepwalker, and Machine Man head to Chile to stop him. Now this, of course, leads to confrontations with several controlled heroes, as Miss Marvel has to battle several different superpowered beings, one of which would be Tigra. Now, Tigra comes in hot, hitting Carol in the back and bringing her to the ground. As an Avenger, Tigra is a supreme fighter, and she is able to pull Carol's hair, dodge one of her energy attacks, and slash Carol right across the face with her claws before taking a boot to the face. Then another mind-controlled hero, Silverclaw, jumps in and shoves Carol face first into a cliff face before grabbing Carol around the waist. Now, Carol starts to just fly up, but she suddenly starts to feel all woozy wibbly wobbly, and this is when she realizes that Tigra had actually coated her claws with poison that knocks Carol out cold, and she falls from the sky, allowing her to get captured by Puppet Master. Number 3. Iron Man. I think we can all agree that Marvel Comics' second Civil War was a real low point for the character of Captain Marvel. They took Carol Danvers, who used to be incredibly likable and respectable, and made her a rash authoritarian with motives that make literally no sense. Essentially, the story dealt with the discovery of an inhuman precognitive that got visions of future crimes. Captain Marvel wanted to take these as fact and arrest potential criminals before they had even committed said crimes, while Tony Stark, Iron Man, thought that was a dangerous load of hogwaller. There are many reasons why Carol was just straight up wrong, and we will talk about two big ones in just a moment, but during one of the first ever fights between the opposing heroes, taking place in issue number 5 of the event, we get to see just how Tony Stark is someone you should just not underestimate. Now, of course, Tony has proved this time and time again. As they clash, Tony fires off a beam of energy directly at Carol, which she very smugly reminds him she can absorb. But he did not forget that fact, and in fact, he planned for the future without upsetting the natural order of things by developing a tainted energy attack that actually disabled Captain Marvel in one quick move, causing Carol to fall out of the sky like a bug that just got zapped by a lamp. Number 2. The Hulk and Hawkeye. Again, like I said, the whole concept of Captain Marvel using the inhuman precog, known as Ulysses, as a way of stopping future potential crimes had quite a few loopholes. A big one being that all those visions were preventable and changeable, meaning his visions weren't even guaranteed to come to pass. This made it extremely problematic to start arresting individuals based on those crimes. One of the first to be targeted was the Hulk. Ulysses had a vision that the Hulk was going to rampage and wipe out literally all of the Avengers, and on the very next page, Carol shows up at Bruce Banner's lab in Utah all angry and trying to place Bruce under arrest. Taking him outside, there is an entire assembled group of Avengers, Inhumans, mutants. Pretty much everyone is here. When Beast of the X-Men hacks into Bruce's lab servers, he discovers that Bruce is experimenting on himself, and this freaks everyone out. But as Bruce is trying to explain that the experiments are actually keeping the Hulk persona at bay, everyone is yelling and things are getting more and more tense and out of hand when out of nowhere, 2 gamma-tipped arrows came flying out of the tree line, striking Bruce in the head and the heart, completely ending his life. Now this was Hawkeye, but it turns out that every vision Ulysses is having is pure guesswork, and there's no guarantee that any of them will come true. So basically, Carol essentially caused the passing of Bruce Banner at the hands of Hawkeye based off of a possibility that he could Hulk out and take everyone out. Number 1. Captain America, Miss Marvel, T'Challa, and the Inhumans. The very last point I want to make from the second Civil War event comes from issue number 5 and 6. At the end of the 5th issue, when Iron Man's forces and Carol's forces come to blows, the whole fight ends when Ulysses receives another vision that he projects out to everyone who is in attendance. Now this vision shows Miles Morales' Spider-Man standing on the steps of the Capitol building with a beaten and deceased Captain America impaled through the chest in his hands, with him seemingly being the cause of it. Now this causes everyone to stop straight in their tracks, and Miles freaks the heck out. He pulls up his mask, unable to breathe, and is just sitting on the ground as Carol tries to immediately put him under arrest. It's so stupid, because almost everyone here knows that this is simply not something that Miles would ever do. While Tony and Carol are arguing over this, Captain America is the one to step up. He tells Miles that he knows he would never do that and asks him what he wants to do, and he lets Miles go home. Now with Carol protesting Captain America, he simply puts out his hand and says he didn't do anything wrong, just like Bruce didn't do anything wrong, just like Rhodey didn't do anything wrong, who also died earlier. Carol then tries to chase after Thor, who flies miles home, but she's grabbed by Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, who turns on Carol for like the first time ever. Then King T'Challa turns on her, and then the Inhumans just straight up leave. Everyone abandons her. It's bad.